Well, hey, how's it going? Happy day before the 4th of July. We got a good show planned. Let's bring Kevin in and say hello to Kevin. Hello, Kevin.
Well, hello, Karen, Kevin. What is it? What? I thought you were going to have my picture up instead of me tonight.
Well, I did have your picture up, but it was an artistic rendition.
You can do that. I don't care.
Now, did you hear music at the intro?
I could not. I don't know why.
I can hear it blasting like the hell away in my headphones. So if it's not, I can always fix it in post. But it was there. But hey, we got an exciting show. You were on RegWatch a week ago.
I was
about a week ago, and during that time, you met the wonderful Brent Stafford, and Brent is gonna return the favor and be on our show. So let's invite Brent. Let's bring Brent into the screen here and say hello, Brent.
Come on in.
Hi guys, how's it going?
Good. I met Brent in Washington.
I actually met Brent in Austin about a year and a half ago at a thing, and it was a smoky or vapey hotel bar in the middle of the night.
Yes.
Yes.
Y'all don't go there. I see a bunch of people thinking in there. No, there was a whole bunch of us in a bar. And actually, I've recounted the story multiple times about me and Julie Wassner sitting at the bar and explaining to all the young people that this is what vaping advocacy is, and giving them the entire history of vaping advocacy since 2009. That was an enjoyable evening. Plus, somebody was buying all the drinks. So that was enjoyable. Somebody had borrowed somebody else's credit card and paid all the drink tabs. So that was very nice.
Well, there you go.
And thus is the cycle of life.
Yes. So everybody say hello. There's a whole chat room full of people. Roxy's there, Troop's there, Shannon's there, some nerd named Kevin Crowley's there.
That's right.
There's a couple other people in there, but I've known I've met Brad a year and a half ago, so I've known Brent for a year and a half, and we've had like 3 conversations, and now all that time. No, I'm just joking. But there's a lot of stuff going on, and we actually really need somebody curating all the information, the newscasting, and the bullshit articles, and I, for one, am glad that there's a RegWatch to do that. But Brent, can you kindly give us like a history of RegWatch?
Oh, yeah, it with everything in the last 3 months, time has just lost all of its kind of meaning. So, I've been in television news since 1988. I started right out of high school for the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation in British Columbia, Canada. And was like the first guy that had a beta camera on my shoulder and would run out to a fire and interview the firefighter and then come back and write the story and voice it, edit it, and push it out on air. So like the original one-man band kind of thing. And I did that for many years and kind of got tired of news and needed to grow up. So I went and did a master's degree in communications at Simon Fraser University in my late 20s. And it turns out that it was post-Marxist, post-feminism, postmodernism. I mean, it's like just throw all critical theory and all that stuff together. And that's actually what my master's degree is in. And then right after that, I went down to the States and started working in LA, partnering brands and entertainment properties together. So it's kind of crazy. And then when I finally came back and decided to go back into content, and I did that not at a regular mainstream media. It was indeed. It was a daily newspaper here in Vancouver with the highest circulation in all of Western Canada. And I had a Monday political column in there called The Duel. And so every Monday, I, from the right, quote unquote, center right, and somebody from quote unquote, center left, would duel over the big issues of the day. And so for 5 years, every week, I was writing that column. And during that time, I bought new television gear, set up a new studio, came up with the idea for RegWatch, and then put it together. We launched in 2015 in April 2015, and we did our first vaping piece in October 2015. So it's our 5-year anniversary covering vaping is about to come up.
Yeah. So I'm actually just doing some YouTubing, or not YouTubing, Googling. So I found at BrentStafford.com.
Yes. Yeah, that's that right there. You can go there and you can find out like all of basically the corporate work under Shaky Egg. That's kind of like the big, everything Brent's done kind of place, right? So including my master's degree, I did a documentary on video games at the time, which became, a national hit. And I was, McLean's magazine and all that, where we, took a look at kids and the impact that video games have on kids and their lives and whether or not they get desensitized to violence and all that kind of stuff. So even for my master's work, I was producing television as the product. So if you go to BrentStafford.com, you'll be able to see all of my media appearances on Global. You'll be able to see, all of my other work that's up there. So.
And did I not? Was there a blog at one point or something? Did you have a blog?
The column? Yeah, that actually. So when Post Media, which is like the largest newspaper chain in Canada, and then the second largest. They did a deal back in 2017 where they swapped newspapers in a big sale, and then they closed each other's newspapers all on the same day. And so that one of those papers was the paper I wrote for. And I had luckily already secured for them usage rights for all of my dual columns. So when the paper went down, I just repurposed it and put it up on BrentStafford.com so I could always have my columns somewhere live. But, to be honest, because of the political sensitivities around vaping, generally around the issues, I'm sure we're going to talk about tonight, that there's a wide, diverse, political kind of community. We never turned on the column part on BrentStafford.com right away because I just didn't want to take a chance that those political opinions would somehow get in the way in our vaping coverage. So, and keep in mind, the entire time, for those first several years writing the Dual, when I was covering vaping, I was on the other side writing, weekly, a major political column, and I would have to keep them separate because I was very concerned about what the vaping audience would think about RegWatch's coverage if they knew that Brent Stafford was also, conservative. So I really put a firewall between the two medias for a long time, up until just recently.
Yeah. And I'm going to throw this on screen. I just went to RegWatch. So just to give everybody, because there might be people that have never even visited the website. Your videos are on YouTube. Your videos are streamed on Facebook. Some people may not know what all the other stuff that's on the RegWatch page is. So yeah, RegulatorWatch.com. It's there's not just vaping on here, obviously.
No. No, I mean, sorry, go ahead.
You have a COVID-19 tab now.
Yeah,
I think every media site has to have a COVID-19 coverage tab.
We had our tab up like by March 18th. So yeah, we did our very first COVID piece on March 16th.
March 16th. I already see something that people are going to get triggered on. The very first thing says Wuhan virus, and people will make a big deal about that.
You mean vapors or just people?
Vapors and vapors are people, Kevin.
Oh, please don't say that. So I'm a vapor.
Are people.
I'm a bot. I don't care.
That is true. Kevin has been fully researched and has been assigned the designation bot by at least what did we 4? At least I know of at least 4 actual journals or 4 actual studies that have said that Kevin is a bot. So
impugner, bot. I can't remember the other 2. It don't matter.
So what are some of the other?
Sure.
So what are some of the other topics other than vaping that Regulator Watch covers?
Yeah, and that's a great question. I mean, and obviously, so like the idea behind Regulator Watch, first of all, is that I didn't want to have to placate to traditional mainstream media positions, right? So I'd spent some time outside of mainstream news, and when I lived in the U.S., I lived in the U.S. for many years in L.A., New York. For the longest time, I represented Procter & Gamble and the Pringles brand. So if you've seen Star Wars on a can of Pringles, that's my deal. I've done Star Wars.
Do you get a piece of that pie?
I don't get a piece of it. No, there's no piece.
Star Wars
there's
money. Star Wars money would be good.
Star Wars money would be great. But I do have hanging behind my black curtain here in my studio what's the right word? A custom, exclusive, one-of-a-kind cell from The Incredibles with a plate and framing, all from Disney, thanking me personally for the deal we did for The Incredibles. So we did 13 brands, partnered in with The Incredibles, and I would create the promotions with the promotion company and stuff like that, and manage through the relationship and stuff. So yeah, it was interesting. I don't know why the hell I brought that up. Right. So, when I got back, the level of bias that was in the media, it was something that I probably could only truly start seeing in my late 30s and early 40s. When I lived in the States, I played a not an insignificant role in early John Kerry campaign, stuff. So, I mean, in LA, amongst the LA fundraising crowd for the Democrats and stuff like that, I got involved with helping John Kerry early on before the 2004 race. And I was involved in Democratic politics in the US. And because I could do that down there. Up here, I was still too associated with news. When I came back up, I then ended up getting involved in politics up here for the BC Liberal Party, which is a bit more the right of center party, even though it's liberal. And I was involved. I represented Vancouver Burrard, downtown Vancouver, the largest concentration of gay and lesbian people in North America, even more than San Francisco, at least they say, in this particular chunk of the peninsula of downtown Vancouver. It's the famous Canadian, area. I'm straight, but I've spent 30 years living and working inside the gay community, whether it's in LA or up here. So I ended up chairing the communications for the biggest gay and lesbian riding in Canada. And so, I've always been involved or in some manner or another connected strongly with progressive politics. And then things just got out of hand. And, my understanding of, what you're covering vaping, if anybody wants to think about, my politics, if I'm right, that's because of vaping. Because watching what public health and the progressives have done to vapors has just scared the hell out of me. So
that's pretty powerful.
That is definitely something that I wanted to talk about. But back to RegWatch and the other topics that they cover.
Thank you for dragging me back as I float off into the ocean. Yeah,
that's right. Kevin and Fig both get distracted by shiny things.
No
they
problem.
Get in the weeds.
No problem. I do for sure. So I've got resources up there. That's the original reason why we started RegWatch. So the original reason is that if I'm going to if I'm coming back into media production, I need to own it. I need to create my own platform. I can't have anybody else except for, relationships with supporters and fans and viewers and whatever the social media companies say, but there's no corporate structure. It's my structure. What, I want to figure out what it is that I'm going to cover and how I'm going to cover it. So I broke down what are going to be some of the big things that are of huge topics. And I wanted to take a side. That's the thing with RegWatch, is that we cover stories that I want to take a side on, and my side is a side. It can grow and change, but it's generally a side. And then I go out and look for supporters that want to support that coverage. And so there's no issue ever for me about impact from supporters, because it's literally, I get supporters that support my position. And then it works out. And, that's the thing. Resources was the big thing for us. And that was Kinder Morgan, the pipeline battles in Canada. I feel strongly as a Canadian that it's insane to think that we can have a prosperous country and do anything that the left asks for without resources. I mean, it's just as simple as that. So I'm very, I'm for, social programs and stuff like that. They don't get paid for. in Canada unless it's from resources, because that's what we do. We dig things out of the ground, and we make stuff, or we sell it to somebody who makes stuff. And so the resources issue has been a looming issue, and the side that is very much against resource extraction is the most vicious Marxist, craziest crowd that we see operating now in a lot of other areas. I'm not saying environmentalism is bad. I'm not saying that there isn't even, opportunity for protest, for sure. It just, in the end, you have to negotiate, and Canadian companies and government and stuff, are willing to do whatever. So, oil, nuclear, salmon farming is a big issue for us. We did a bunch of coverage on that a couple of years ago. Again, the science is sound on salmon farming. It has been so spoiled and poisoned by activism. It's like worse than vaping you could ever think, is like something around salmon farming. It's crazy, but it's just unbelievable. And then climate change. My climate change position was of course there was a problem with climate change. Of course global warming had happened. Of course. But I got to tell you, vaping made me take a second look at it. The science that it was just spoiled consistently over and over. I mean, I can't believe anything on the climate change thing. My position is that if you truly believe that mainstream media and public health have been lying to you about vaping, that's a red pill. And if you don't think it's a red pill, then you're just gnawing at the edges.
And if you don't believe it's a lie, then you don't have two brain cells to rub together, because it's clear. Clear. And what's really funny, what is the most hilarious thing about the red pill, about that whole thing, is the party that says that they're the party of science refuses to accept the science.
Yeah.
I wasn't aware of bringing both brain cells tonight. I really would appreciate you letting me know things like that beforehand.
Well, since you're a bot, you can just plug in. It'll recharge. It'll be okay.
Yeah, the party of science is the one that just says don't look at don't.
Yeah, look at all the science. Oh, but not on this topic, not on vaping.
And look, I don't bring this up on climate change for anything more than to make a point about vaping, right? And that is, how can the science be settled on climate change, or science is settled on climate change but not settled on vaping? Or it's just both the same people. Public health. If you go to the CDC's website, it's climate change is a huge part of it. If you go to the American Association of Public Health Professionals, right? So the National Association, the very first one ever created in the world. If you go to their site right now, it is just covered. It's only climate change. I mean, and it's climate change as climate injustice. It's climate change as in woke, right? So, and you're like, how in the heck does the National Association of Public Health, if they're so bent on this, how can we believe anything they say? Then of course you have 1,200 public health professionals coming out and saying that you won't get COVID as long as you're protesting for the right reason, or it doesn't matter, right? Come on.
And don't wear a mask.
Don't wear a mask.
This is what I think is hilarious. Somebody has politicized wearing a fucking mask.
Yes.
Somebody has decided that, if I wear a mask, that must mean that I'm weak and I'm a Trump supporter. Or on the other hand, there are liberals that are saying, well, Fauci says you don't have to wear a mask, or the WHO says you don't have to wear a mask, or whatever. They get the little soundbite where the WHO girl just fucked up. As somebody that works in healthcare, I can guarantee you a fucking mask will prevent or at least reduce the spread of a virus, any fucking virus that is spread by droplet, period. And this virus is spread by droplet. So a mask will reduce the effective spread of this disease.
This is not new technology, period, right? It's not new technology.
But it begs a question. How come there's no definitive science? It begs a question.
Because
how can any
5 studies come out and say that masks work, 5 studies come out and say masks don't work.
Right. This is what I'm saying. Of something so basic and simple as a mask, science is broken if they can't even have a definitive answer on masks, especially because it's just respiratory disease. I mean, tuberculosis, let me just bring this up because this will be a cool thing for all of you. I don't get a chance to say this on air often, if I ever have. And that is, what's one of the maniacal reasons why the body part org people, especially, are like Nazi? Like literally, you can argue to the end of the day with somebody, and then they'll finally just go, yeah, but you're still breathing in something you're not supposed to be breathing in.
Right.
And that's end stop of it, right? That's, you're not supposed to have it. Where does that come from? There's something deep. And you know what it is? I firmly believe this, is that up until just 60 years ago, 1 in 10 human beings that ever lived on this planet from the dawn of our species died of tuberculosis. We are an engineered environmental organism that is in constant pressure and fighting with respiratory disease, tuberculosis specifically, right? And so it's just gone and it's erased, but the leftovers of that are deep in the reason. Well, I mean, March of Dimes turned into truth, didn't it? Or however that whole thing goes. And March of Dimes' sole purpose was to eradicate TB. Yeah. So we're living in just a short time of our entire species on this planet where we're in this shadow and we're in this fog over TB. We've lost our understanding of that. And I think some of the dragon slaying, some of the very faithful, the religiosity of the battle comes from that. And when you start to realize that, you can understand them a bit better, because TB is something that has just, killed us in the dawn of time. So sorry, I just wanted to throw that out there.
No, I mean, I've treated TB patients. So yeah, I mean, I understand how scary it is. COPD is bad enough.
Sure. So my point is that we should know what the research is on masks. It's not like respiratory illness has not been the top primary thing that we've had to battle as a species since the dawn of time. And yet in 2020, there's no consensus on a mask for respiratory illness.
Well, I think, the science was settled everywhere in the world but here. The science was settled everywhere else but here. Yeah. I posted, like, when I started, well, not started, but when I decided to pick a specific battle with Jerome Adams,
Jerry,
regarding the mask situation, I linked him like 15 different studies from throughout time, from like 1918 till now, showing, the success rate of reducing viral spread of respiratory diseases that are spread by droplet by using mitigation of masks. And, it was there. The science is settled. I mean, everywhere but here.
And Canada.
Period.
And Canada. Well, we suffered the same thing.
I call Canada the 51st state. So
sure. Sure. Yeah. Well, I'm just making sure we know it's not a Trump thing, because Canada is not influenced by Orange Man. So
we tried to buy Greenland or Iceland. We could just try to buy Canada.
I'd take it.
They did just vote. This could be, you guys could be relegated to 52, because last week they did pass in the House
for DC
bill to make DC into a state. It won't pass the Senate. There's a whole bunch of senators that are against it for some reason, but I think they can't figure out where to put that extra star on the flag. I think they're just having a hard time adding that 51st star.
And their motto, they're concerned about the motto.
But okay, so speaking of headlines and shit that's happened this week, obviously there's a lot of legislation in the States. There's a lot of legislation and a lot of action and advocacy all over the world. We talked about Australia last week. We had Paul and Steve on from Australia. We kind of mentioned the Netherlands. South Africa is also on a tipping point as well. There's a whole bunch of shit going on, but here in the States, obviously SB 810 in Florida is still in play. when I last heard, it had not been transmitted to the governor. And we have all sorts of other stuff. So Brent is curated all sorts of links and stuff. I'm just gonna use him. For
Yeah, I
content.
just threw some up. Well, or you might not. They're a little custom. I mean, yeah. Oh, you had asked, did you want me to just, I did have something kind of quickly here I can do if you still wanted to know a little bit about RegWatch. We do have a tagline. You had asked about a mission statement, and we have, so we have on, and I'll just jump to it here. And so, we frame ourselves in exactly this way. We cover the issues, controversies, and impacts arising from regulation of anything economic, social, and environmental. So the issues and impacts are what we look to cover. That's where the stories are, right? And we're original video content, which is our key thing. We want our video content to move opinion. So that means it's got a side. We have a frame, because all media has a frame. And then we kind of walk people through. This has been up since day one, and it gives our news values. So, it's been very important for us because we've been upfront that we're industry supported across whatever industries we're covering. And, we talk about our positions, on environmental and sustainable objectives must be in balance with economic and social imperatives. So that's how we cover, economy and the environment. So climate change falls into that line, right? We can talk about, global warming. I'm all over that, right? Sure. But everything must be in balance with sustainable objectives. And as soon as it's about ripping down the system, then it's not. And that's what we go after on that kind of thing. So, that's our main thing. And then the other one, when it comes to specifically to vaping, and now this is obviously, because we are supporter funded, whether it's businesses or individual vapors and vaping companies and stuff like that. This is our support page, and it just lists, and our website is giving me so much problems. I actually
threw the link into the chat room a while ago.
Excellent. Thank you. And so these are the big things. When we approach vaping content, we promote fact-based science. So that's, it's fact-based science. It sounds so crazy to have to do that, but that's what we do. And then we counter misperceptions. So that's, the goal. If there's a misperception, we want to address that, and we want to help provide information around that. Destigmatize nicotine. That has been for us a fundamental thing for 5 years. If you can fix the perception of nicotine, you can hopefully fix vaping. We're a firm believer that recreational nicotine should be the pitch, right? It might be too late for that. Maybe it should have been 10 years. I mean, it should have been 10 years ago. I think there's an argument that if the pitch had been about nicotine and clearing that up and legal access to that for recreational nicotine, because you already have legal access to it when you're smoking, right? That it might have been easier than harm reduction. Yeah, I don't know, but that's the discussion that we like to have on the show. And then hold researchers, regulators, reporters to account. So that's our mission statement for RegWatch's vaping coverage. It can be applied to a lot of our coverage, obviously. And then, of course, support.regulatorwatch.com, and you can fill out. Please, American dollars go huge for us. So that's that.
Yeah, there's a very beneficial conversion rate for you guys right now.
Absolutely. And we're going to be doing a major fundraiser soon, because obviously we're so downstream. So we've been hit hard. And right now, American greenbacks are getting close to $1.50. It's $1.40 right now. It's unbelievable. So American dollars can really help us right now. And we've been stepping up again.
That's the Trump, the strong financial system that Trump likes to brag about. So let's take advantage of that for you guys, because, like I said, I never asked for money here on the show, because for me and Kevin, we do this for fun. We do this as our job. We have jobs. This is not our job. And we don't offer nearly the quality content that you do. I mean, we're just a bunch of guys that get on here and curse and have fun and give out information for free. But, RegWatch makes it look pretty. You get guys that I have been trying for years to get Dr. John Britton on. For years, couldn't figure out a way to contact him. He's not on Twitter. He doesn't have any contact information that I could easily get to. And what, you had him on last week, so
for the third time.
Yeah, that's not fair at all. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not fair at all.
RegWatch from its website, so people, if they go there, right, and they can see the other ones are like, it's all under habits is vaping and cannabis and booze and pills. And then we've got some free speech and stuff like that under thinking and big tech. So, we've got a wide thing and we curate across all of that, stuff. Basically what we do is we create a positive viewing environment for our original video content. And so, the whole construction of Regulator Watch is designed to go, how do I get a John Britton? That's exactly it. The entire website from day one. And of course, our first iteration, the same. So because I know from being in the media for so many decades, exactly what tweaks a media person or a potential guest to know that it's credible and real. And so RegWatch just got built with that to be basically the demonstrated place to where a potential guest can go and go, oh, yeah, this is respectable. I can be on this site, and that's it. And then produce good content and do your thing. Yeah.
So like our biggest catch, and I think she's been on everybody after us, was getting Dr. Mariwa Glover to come on.
I've not had her on yet.
I already warned you prior to going live that we have colorful language. We sometimes drink during the show, and it was funny was we all made a gentleman's agreement before the show that when she was on the show, we were going to be on our best behavior. We didn't use any bad language. It was a very good 3-hour long talk. There were people on the show that were in the chat room. She was giving out like helpful books to read, all sorts of, information. It was awesome. And then we started talking about the bot study that Kevin was named in. And she says, oh, I created a hashtag. And we were like, oh, well, what was the hashtag? She says, bot shit. And the moment she said bot shit, like we all bursted.
It was like a stress relief.
Because one of the people that's in the show in the chat room was like, it was Keith Gossett was in the chat room. He said, these three boys look like they've been drugged to church and made to sit in the front row of the church. And yeah, the moment she let the steam out, we were like, oh crap, we could have been way more boisterous. But so yeah, I mean, the vaping thing, the vaping coverage is on here is important, but I think a lot of times people fail to see that we also, I mean, the whole idea of single issue voters is real, but I don't think that many people that are vapors, because we are such a wide demographic, people from every walk of life, from every educational level smoked, and those people become vapors. And we have gay people that vape. We have white, orange, green, every color of person that vapes. We have people from every socioeconomic class vape, and they also have differing opinions on other topics. So we always get into the discussion of getting celebrities to step up and be advocates for vaping. And the thing is they look at vaping and they go, well, most of the political people that support vaping are right-wing people, or, conservative, small business promoters, don't necessarily jibe with their other political things, because, people like Leonardo DiCaprio is a huge environmentalist. He can't get out and support a bill that is sponsored by, a Republican. He just won't do it. So it sucks for us, because trying to talk people that are, usually socially liberal on every other topic, environmentalism, whether that's drug policy, criminal justice reform, which are things that the Republicans have slowly but surely started to creep towards some sort of respectable platform on, will not say, for example, I see people all the time posting, well, Joe Biden has already said he's going to go against vaping, so you got to vote for Trump. Well, those people ain't never going to vote for Trump. And I really went Southern on that one. Those people are not going to vote for Trump because of all the other stuff that Trump stands for that they hate. So it's a good thing, though. I mean, because you have these resources that are well thought out in other topics to get people to think critically before they look at vaping.
Right.
That was a really long way to get to that.
I think the end point there just takes just one sidestep away from a really important main thing that you're trying to communicate. Certainly, U.S. centric. I can see what you're saying there. The Republican Party support is squishy for vaping. There's only a certain amount, to the extent that business owners may tend to, be more, Republican orientated, likely because they're business owners is one. Two, we know the nature and makeup of the entrepreneur aspect of the vaping world, and they generally come from some turmoil in their lives. That's generally their story of some sort, whether it's class, drugs, alcohol, whatever. And so when those type of people get their life together and then participate in the entrepreneurship around vaping, right, they tend to be more conservative than others. And it's also part of their life experience too that's done it, not just simply that they're business owners. So you've got that. And in Canada, that's mirrored similar. And we have the very same opposition to vaping as you do, yet we don't have a Republican Party. And our Conservative Party is nowhere near as kryptonite as Republicans are. And then if you start to metastasize this around the world, it can't be a Republican thing, because how do you explain WHO and the whole EU thing? I guess you could reach deep and do that. But I think that there's an innate drive amongst the people that push this, that they want to control how people live their lives. Yeah. They see a way that it should be, and ways that are off of that disgust them. And that disgust is what powers the mendacity, the hypocrisy, the sophistry. All of it is driven by that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's no longer quit or die. It's quit like we want you to, or die.
Right.
And I said that, in a tweet like 2 weeks ago, talking about Australia. Yeah. I mean, that's all they want you. They want to control you. They're going to increase the price of cigarettes to be $40 a pack so that you can't afford that. Then they're going to take away the other option that will give you the nicotine that you need or want, because, well, I need it or people will die. But, and I'm not joking. But yeah, so they're removing all the obstacles for, a big industry takeover. Whether, there are people that still believe that big tobacco is our biggest threat. They are a threat. Do not get me wrong. But pharma and public health are the number one threats and have been for years. I said that in the Vaping Militia Radio when I did that radio show. I've said that repeatedly all over, the place. You can find me saying it all over the place. Big pharma was, and always will be our biggest threat. Obviously, tobacco companies really, we are a flea to them, as we are right now. If you look at the gross income of the big tobacco companies combined, our little $40 billion industry is less than a month profit from one company. So, sure, yeah, they would like that $40 million, but considering some of them make $300 billion a year alone, one big company can make that much money a year worldwide. Our little tiny industry is not a threat to them yet. So they can stunt our growth. They can say, okay, let's work with politicians to slowly but surely remove them so that we can peel off their clientele a little at a time until they're gone. They have patience. They agreed to a massive amount of money going to the government every year just to protect the bigger share of their income. So yeah,
that they did. There's no doubt.
So Kevin just shared something.
Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Just what you said, basically, who gets the credit or blame for regulation, restriction, taxes, or bans for less harmful alternatives? I did this because of Joe Gitchell. Follow him. He makes you think. I'm assuming you can see my mouse, but public health is 51%. Government is next, then tobacco, then pharma. So that kind of surprised me that pharma was low. It's 66 votes on the final results for a day, but it's tobacco's the least of our worries. They are a worry, but nothing like the other three.
I mean, I'm not saying they're our friends, and I'm not saying that we should just ignore them, but I'm saying the biggest existential threat that we have right now is the pharmaceutical and public health arenas. Public health doesn't want vaping to successfully destroy smoking, because what are they going to do? What is their job going to be once smoking is gone?
Well, Truth is already working on opioids. I'm assuming Tobacco Free Kids is as well. So they have other things.
Well, they can have opioid-free youth?
Opioid-free kids, whatever. But how much traction can that have in comparison?
Well, the opioid epidemic, and I'm air quoting that one, is not nearly as bad now as it was 5 years ago.
No.
I've the number of doctors here where I work locally, here in the small city of Corpus Christi, that have lost their DEA number so that they can't prescribe those medicines and have to have another doctor oversee all of their prescriptions is huge. Yeah. Like there are plenty of doctors now that have to write a script, and there's 2 lines, and they have to go to another doctor to look at your medical file, look at the medicine the doctor prescribed for you, and sign off on it before you can actually have your prescription.
And I took your advice from about a month and a half ago when I watched The Pharmacist on Netflix. And
that was that's a very good documentary. I mean, obviously it's scary. I mean, Purdue did themselves a disservice by doing what they did in such a way that they couldn't hide it. I mean, this was obviously bad business. The way they did everything almost transparently. Well, they didn't even fucking hide it.
That's the thing about the tobacco control industry and the public health industry, because it's a business. I don't give a shit if it says nonprofit or not. They're profitable. And for 50 years, they've said, we're trying to help you quit smoking. They give you half-assed medicines and quit methods. And now we have the internet, and we have smarter people than at least you and I, maybe not Brent, but we have people that are scientists and doctors going, wait a minute, you're idiots. So now we can call them out on it. So their onions peeling away at their, I'm not sure what word I want to use, but they're hypocrites, So the hypocritical side of them is kind of wide open now, thanks to people like Brent and Demi and you and, others. So.
Yeah, trying to point out the hypocrisy. It's a weird battle to do, because there's some joy in it, I would say, but in the end, is they live off of hypocrisy. I mean, it's their fuel. They're not actually being hypocrites, actually, to be honest, and this applies across the board, because to be a hypocrite means that you have a double standard, and they actually don't have a double standard. They have one single standard. Does it advance our goal, and does it destroy our enemy?
Right.
That's the standard. And so they're happy to, I mean, this was a part of the French Revolution, in fact, actually. What are you going to throw at them? Hypocrisy and violence, right? Because the hypocrisy just makes people just go nuts. And it clouds your thinking. You can't actually see the one single standard that they're applying across the board. And people have to remember that standard is, it has to advance their cause and destroy the enemy.
And the enemy is their friend.
Not to them, because the enemy to them is in their way. We're in their way. See,
right? No, I meant the tobacco companies are their partners in some sense.
Right.
Play the bad guy is what I meant.
Sure. So our position is that there is a well-tracked political position and way of thinking that is strong in the United States, that has been there for about 120 years, and it created the administrative state, created the FDA. It is public health. It created public health. The positions and principles of this way of thinking continues to this day to drive the entire center to left. And that position is one that believes certain things, that human beings are born good. They're not born with capacity to do great evil.
Right.
And those that do bad things, it's only because of faulty social institutions and ignorance that'll do that. So if we can get more money and get more control and more power to fix the social institutions and fix the education, then everybody will be good. Right. And then to get there, ends justify the means. So to get to that end, any means are justified. And then that gets you to the standard. Right. So whatever it is that's applied, you can be one side on it as long as it's advancing the overall cause and
the molding of the mind.
Right.
So this week, and I've showed this on the air a couple times. This is the very first issue of the Vaping Advocate magazine.
Great issue.
And I wrote in every issue of this magazine. I actually wrote everything in the last 3 issues of this magazine.
Wow.
But in the back cover, on the back, not the back page, but the last page of actual text, I wrote a memo, and it was it's a bit of satire. It's from 100 years in the future, and I actually didn't have the original anymore, so I went and recreated it this week, and I posted it on Twitter. I posted it on the Smoke Free Radio Facebook page, and I wanted to bring it up because a lot of the things that are in this memo are actually quite relevant to the discussion of public health. I can't do that, can I? But anyway, it's dated March 30th, 2016. I wrote this in October of 2015. So, 101 years in the future. And it just starts, it's from the Office of the Secretary of Nicotine Control. And the whole point of this piece is that they want to control nicotine. And I knew this in 2015. So anyway, on today, the 100th anniversary of the release of the FDA regulations for control of liquid nicotine, I would like to thank all of you for your hard work. We would also like to remind you all where we started. After many years of iron-fisted control of nicotine products, our predecessors almost lost their hard-fought authority in the early 2000s. Upstarts from the smaller companies had innovated delivery of nicotine to smokers with the invention of vapor products. This started cutting into the market share of cigarette companies who were our very lucrative partners. Our agreements with them had helped them and us and helped both of our institutions become quite powerful. The tobacco companies first tried to discredit the obviously more effective vapor products through the media, political allies, and even using public health, who also benefited greatly from the sale of their inferior cigarettes. Other allies, the pharmaceutical companies, had also expressed distress to us and asked for our intervention. Initially, FDA leaders bumbled their efforts and lost legal battles with the upstarts. It took a few years to gain their feet. In April 2014, the FDA released their deeming rule of vapor products. This was their first step in crushing a small but very disruptive industry. I am sure you have all seen these devices. We still confiscate some old devices periodically in sweeps. They do not look like cigarettes, and it took quite a lot of effort for us to sway the public into thinking that vaping was the same as smoking. It was effective, though. In just a few years, our combined campaigns changed poll results or responses. People actually thought the device that caused no harm was actually as bad, if not worse, than smoking. Without those efforts, we would not have the power and control we have today. I want to point out power and control.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they want. They want the power and control. Even today, we still arrest DIYers who are acquiring black market nicotine and mixing their own. Recently, we even found someone still trying to sell e-liquid using social media. He was sentenced to 20 years for selling his harmless liquid death. We should thank the congressman who came up with that nickname. It was popular with the Save the Children crowd. Once the final rules were approved by OMB, the FDA was able to rapidly implement an insurmountable system for product approval and criminalization of the product and sale of vapor products. There was some legal wrangling from the upstarts, but their efforts were mainly financed by a small segment of the industry and a very small percentage of consumers. Thank God more of them did not join the fight. More effort from them, and it might have tipped the balance in their favor. Since then, our partners, tobacco, pharma, and public health, have all prospered and been able to maintain the status quo. Our enforcement has also kept the prisons full of vapors, and the fines we levy against their families has been very helpful in keeping the rabble down. Again, thank you for your hard work. Now let us focus on another 100 years of prosperity for our organization and all of our partners.
Amen.
So
Cindy's in the room, Brent.
The world has not changed in the 5+ years since I wrote this piece.
Nope.
Funding for the fight is still not there. There's a very small but passionate group of people fighting this. They actually have. I mean, at the time, the numbers had just came out. The 2016 numbers. They did a survey, and we've talked about it multiple times on this show. 70% of the people polled believed that vaping was safer than smoking. They just released a revision of that same poll this year. 70% of the people polled believe that vaping is as harmful, if not more harmful, than smoking.
Man.
So their efforts to manipulate the general public are quite successful.
Public health has a direct pipeline into mainstream media that's got no filter. There's no organization. There's no real any politics. The executive branch doesn't have, a filter on that. It is just a direct pipeline, and mainstream media just parrots out everything public health says. And this is like from back in my day in the 90s. It just, it's funny because I hear this a lot now, and we've said this on RegWatch quite a bit in our early days, but how can you trust it with one day it's like eggs are bad, next week it's good, chocolate's bad, chocolate's good, red wine's bad, red wine's good, coffee's bad, coffee's good, blah, blah, blah. And, the anchors just get these stories. It comes in and they just, well, you thought chocolate was good for you, now it's bad. The next week it's the same thing. And so they're actually practicing the mendacity right there. They literally are laughing about how the science changes and it's just flip-flopping, and they just report it as
deliberately.
Yeah. I mean,
that's because it's public health.
None of these public health groups could exist without something to fight. None of them.
Totally.
And they have to do everything that they can possibly do to make, I can remember headlines from 2015, 2016, 2017, new vaping fad dripping and then they compared dripping to freebasing cocaine.
Right. Yes.
Yes. Time did a big spread on this. Vaping as addictive as heroin.
Yes. I use a Guardian story with that headline all the time in our.
Right, but everybody thinks that a lot of this came, a lot of the youth vaping coverage, a lot of the youth vaping, ideology or whatever started recently when Juul came out.
No, yeah,
but I mean, prior to the Juul coming out, it was, this dripping is going to kill your kids. It was, I've been here for a decade now. So, I remember all of their bullshit because I'd got shows. I've been doing this since like 2014, 2013. We did the Vaping Militia Radio, and we did the same thing on that show that we do here. We dissect their headlines. We show the articles on screen. We show where the facts are wrong. The same thing then that we did, that I do now. And it's because the general public is no longer interested in reading the news. They just want to read the headline. They just want to read the lower third. They just want to read the chyron. That's all they're interested in, is what's zipping across the screen on the bottom. They don't need the full text. They just need, a headline and a blurb. That's all they need. They're not reading the fucking text anymore because, I used to work in media. If it bleeds, it leads. And that's all they care about. So, yeah, it's ridiculous because the way they construct their story. When I was a kid, when I went to school for journalism, it was who, what, when, where, and why was in that was the first paragraph.
How, who?
Now they put a lot of that relevant information like in the third or fourth paragraph because people aren't going to read that far.
Yeah, the headlines are designed to inform the herd on what the right position on an issue is. So it can't be more than just a headline and a subheadline. It's designed to signal to you what the right position is. No, I don't mean right or left. I mean the correct thinking position.
Well, yeah.
Does that make sense?
There's yes.
Is it?
Yeah, there's the truth, and then there's the truth, and the truth is over here. Is not the truth that's over here, but they want you, look over here.
Well, you mentioned public health and what it is that they work on, right? And so let me just show this to you. I mentioned this to you at the start of the show. This is American Public Health Association.
Yes.
And this is the association. And look at it. Now what I want you to know is this COVID here is new. But every other slide here is not. Every other slide here was here in February when I did my initial research on this. So it's not, you think public health and you think science and medicine. And I'm not saying that racism isn't an issue that needs to be taken care of, but is it a public health issue, right? To the extent that they focus on it is where we need to question, right? Because they've got so much influence. And
is gun violence on there somewhere?
Yes, of course, gun violence is on
because because one of the ex-surgeon generals decided to say that we had a gun violence epidemic,
right?
And that
here it is.
That was
So this is the Public Health Association. So this is every single public health worker, right? Is a member of the APHA. This has been around since, in one form or another, since like the 1920s or 10s. This is like this is prestigious. And so, so everything here, vaccines, that's like a traditional public health measure, but, racism and health equity, these are all not strictly public health issues, if you know what I mean. If that's fair for me to say, I would say that this is, an intersection of public health, science, and issues that are more left-leaning, if I'm considering.
Well, you can say that. I mean, obviously, things like what's the word I'm thinking of? Nutritional. What's the word? It's a new buzzword that I've been hearing all the time about people not having food because of money. What's the word I'm looking for? Somebody will throw it in the chat room.
You're not saying, well, there's food security gets talked about a lot.
Food security is one of them.
Yeah.
But those are I mean, obviously that's important. People need to have food. We shouldn't. I mean, if we're the greatest nation in the world, which we can debate on, because I don't necessarily believe that we are as we once were, and I'm sure that will piss a lot of people off. But there shouldn't be people in this country who don't have enough food to survive. Period. I mean, I will totally get behind any program that gives people that don't have food. Period. I also believe that we should figure out ways to make that so that they can earn their own food. But that is not maybe a public health issue.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously it's one of those issues too, that, who's going to say no, people shouldn't have food. Right. I mean, yeah. But I mean, strictly
we constantly see people bitching and moaning about CHIP or what's the food stamps program now? It's not food stamps anymore, but whatever it's called.
Sure. Yeah.
We constantly see people talking about that. Well, you know what? There was a period in my life where we actually used to get food.
Mm-hmm.
We'd go to this place. There would be a tractor and trailer full of food, and we would get the government cheese, and we were all that stuff. I mean, I'm poor white trash, so or I was. I think I'm slightly less now. But I'm still a hillbilly, and poor West Virginia kid. But I don't necessarily think that those programs are awful. The commodities.
I mean, obviously that there you're arguing about how to best solve a problem, I think, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah,
the difference being whether or not is something a problem, and then how to solve it, and the acrimony around the Great Society, coming from Johnson in 66, 67. There's a huge mass of actual real tangible programs never really executed anywhere else, in the Western world, that the U.S. got behind. And that is the Great Society, and that is the 24 trillion that you hear about right now that has been spent, primarily, to lift people up, and stuff like that, across the board in the U.S. So the issues will be always in the end is, does the government money de-incentivize people from, taking their own responsibility to, move themselves forward? And I think that's an endless argument to have. But if we can agree that there's a problem and that government has a role to solve it, I think we agree on that, and we could agree on that on many, many issues. It's just how. It's the how.
That actually is something that could be considered a public health issue. But gun rights, gun violence being an epidemic, is that a public health issue? Is any number of the other things that you showed on screen a while ago, should they actually be? Is public health the best people to be working on those problems when they have an inordinate amount of other health issues that they could be dealing with?
Sure. And let me just point out an answer to that, and I think is very clear. And the answer is no, because public health enjoys such an unparalleled, powerful position. Like, look what they did with COVID, right? That was a public health decision. And fair enough, you're right or wrong. We're talking about unelected people with a direct line to mass media that's unaccountable and clearly will talk out of both sides of their mouth on the science, as long as it advances what they want to have happen. So when they are involved with issues that are naturally political in nature, like whether, gun violence and gun rights is, something to have, how a food stamp program should work versus something else, climate change, racism, You know, these things are inherently political from the dawn of time. Mankind, womankind, peoplekind have had issues with race and tribes and all of that kind of stuff. And so to just hand that over to public health and because they've captured it. You want to talk about regulatory capture in the world where corporations capture the regulatory bodies? You're seeing a public health capture where they've gone out and they've picked all of the contentious social issues and they said, don't worry about that. That's a public health issue now. And we will decide it. And we're going to tell you what to do. And the whole mechanism of the fascist state will come down and affect that control. And, you know, so these are political issues. They're not public health issues. Public health in and of itself is political. Epidemics have been political since the dawn of time. Epidemics have been used as a weapon of war since the dawn of time. And they have us believe that it's just some banal thing and throw some shaky science at it and lock us down and then use it to crush people. Right. Well, yeah, no shit. You've used it to crush people. That's what fascists do with epidemics.
Well, and I mean, look, the Romans used to catapult or trebuchet diseased corpses into the cities of their enemies.
That they did.
Yeah. Do you think that every, little things that we have cures for now, dysentery, little things can destroy, people in an enclosed place quite easily. And, I'm quite sure that when the U.S. cavalry sold diseased blankets to the Native Americans to cull or to reduce the Native American population, and we did that, by the way. I'm not
certain that's true history. It's Howard Zinn history for sure. But
yeah, well,
yeah, I mean, it's Zinn history, no doubt. It's in history books.
Yeah.
I don't know the extent to which that happened, though. I've read, in my line of reading history, there has been some disagreement on that. But anyhow,
well, that's like climate change, though. There's, I mean, there's always three sides to a story: your story, my story, and the truth.
And sometimes the truth isn't really all that solid either, right? So
no, yeah. So in history is always written by the victors, and then a decade later or 100 years later, the descendants of the person that lost will write a book and put it out, and that's how that works too. So yeah. I mean, there's
no doubt that 90% of the Native American population or whatever was wiped out over disease, right? That Europeans brought. It's just how it's just how savage that whole thing was of purposely doing the blanket thing. I don't know.
Well, I mean, even if you just go down to the basic level, when Columbus came and landed in Hispaniola, Cuba, right? Yeah, landed in the Gulf. We'll say that they had germs that they brought with them that they didn't they didn't on purposefully spread, diseases to the native population because they didn't know about germs. They didn't have microscopes. But we inadvertently wiped out people as well. I mean, just by bumbling through.
Well, until the other way around too. Remember, the plague came from Asia. So that's an example of a Eurasian epidemic moving into a population that had no, protection. So the plague actually is exactly the same analogy as what happened.
The Silk Road.
Yeah, because of the Silk Road.
Yeah. Yep. But yeah, back to vaping. So, I just saw that there's a brand new story. I just did a Google search. I just flipping through, and it looks like the UK has now its first recorded case of EVALI.
No.
Yes. At least that's what the headline says.
I was going to say, is it alleged or is it actual?
Well, I will just throw it here on screen so that you can.
I'm showing April 30th on this.
Well, this one is 7 hours ago.
Got it. See it. Yeah.
Yeah. Scan reveals first reported case of vaping related illness in the UK. Here, Brent,
you do it, or
I'll just no, you can do it.
Okay. Do you want to read it?
There. Look.
Oh, there you go. Okay, I'm going back to my single, guys.
Yeah, so it's that's a different one than the one that I have is from LAD, which is also a questionable news source, you open that website up and you get hit by ads like crazy.
You're going to want to throw yours up. You've just got me on a single.
Yeah, I'm going to throw it up. Boom. So it says, scan reveals first reported adult case of vaping-related illness or disease in the UK. And like I said, there's tons of ads. But a scan image has been released by researchers, which reveals the first reported case of vaping-related lung disease in the UK. And there's a picture of the actual X-ray that, I really think is funny. When showing chest X-rays, I'm going to take this off screen for a second because this is hilarious. So when Chris Cuomo got diagnosed with the COVID, and he spent all that time in his basement, and he was broadcasting on his TV and stuff. After he got better, he was broadcasting a show, and he had Sanjay Gupta and another person on, and they threw up the chest X-ray on screen. And Sanjay Gupta is like, oh, well, you've got infiltrate. This is awful, blah, blah, blah. And, oh, your lungs are diseased and awful, and this is bad. And let me show you this, blah, blah, blah. As that was going on, it was being broadcast live on Twitter by CNN. They were actually broadcasting it themselves. And in the Twitter feed from their live broadcast, real pulmonologists that read X-rays of chest X-rays for a living, because Sanjay Gupta is not a pulmonologist, was saying those are some healthy looking lungs and yada yada yada. And I always like when they throw something up there that the general public, like this photograph of a chest X-ray, because I'm not a pulmonologist. I am not going to try to point out stuff and say, oh, well, these are infiltrates and this is this and blah blah blah, because I'm not a fucking pulmonologist. I'm a therapist, and this is not what I do. But I think it's hilarious when they throw stuff up here that nobody actually knows what to look at, the general public at least. So anyway, experts at Royal Papworth Hospital, one of the world's leading cardiothoracic hospitals and the UK's main heart and lung transplant center, published the report with the image showing that the patient met the criteria for a confirmed diagnosis of vaping-associated lung injury, otherwise known as EVALI. According to the report, the patient was a previously fit and well man in his 40s who attended the emergency department complaining of chest pain and worsening shortness of breath. The only underlying health condition he had was the fact that his appendix had been removed sometime prior to his hospital admission. So did he stop on the way and get it removed? Anyway, so there's a picture of a guy using a pod device. This is an all-in-one thing. I don't know what this is a Preva. I don't know who makes that. But anyway, the anonymous man reported a history of cigarette smoking, cannabis use in the distant past, and occasional binge drinking of alcohol.
Stop. Now that's important because he was binge drinking alcohol. That had to be put in there.
Yeah, that's important. Because it.
Fuck. How else would we have learned anything?
It does mention cannabis use, but it's in the distant past, and it probably, since it's distant past, it can't be blamed on illicit THC cartridges.
So to put a qualification of a distant past on there is the giveaway.
24 hours.
That's the giveaway. Well, that's the giveaway that that this is propaganda, because they know that they have to say cannabis, but they have to qualify it as then being irrelevant to this issue, and that means that's the giveaway.
You got it.
Yeah. He had stopped smoking cigarettes 6 weeks previously and had commenced the regular use of a peppermint flavored vaping device. Is the device flavored? Anyway, as an aid to help him quit smoking. Within hours of presentation, he required intubation and mechanical ventilation, and he continued to deteriorate over subsequent hours, developing severe acute respiratory distress syndrome, ARDS, which required extracorporeal membrane oxygenation, a machine that delivers oxygen to the body.
They mean a ventilator, right?
Yeah, that's it. They already said that he had already been intubated, which means anyway.
Ventilation, right?
Yeah. So the report,
So I mean, why didn't this present as COVID? Like, I mean, like, so this guy shows up and he's got a cough and some chills and fever. I mean, what is it? So are they? How come they're not releasing X-rays of lungs of COVID patients? We've not seen one. I've not seen one. But yeah,
I've actually
there's
seen
all
several.
of these evals.
And
Have you seen one?
I have seen several. Yes.
Okay, so
towards the bottom, they show cannabis one at a time.
In addition to Chris Cuomo's, there's
Right.
been a couple other news pieces that threw them up there.
do we have any that are available like in the billions, like Evali online? Like, can you Google? I mean, we should Google. I was going to say you to Google because then you could take it, but I'd just be curious. I'd like to see an Evali X-ray, and I'd like to put that up next to this COVID X-ray up to the Evali X-ray, and see how do they look? What do they look like? Good for us to see.
Well, we're gonna do this on the fly.
Okay.
So let's see. Okay, so there's tons of COVID X-rays.
And by the way, that X-ray there that they've got on this Evali thing, it just looks pretty screwed up. That Evali one, there's a lot of there's a lot of objects and stuff inside there that it looks almost like an embryo. I mean, it doesn't all look like it.
Right, I'm gonna try to figure out a way to make this both be on screen at the same time. So give me a second here.
Sure.
Good manipulation.
No. While you do that,
okay.
I just want to make sure that I do one thing, and this is definitely critical for us at RegWatch. Is I want to thank John from Demand Vape, and everyone knows who John is. And
well, John's our only sponsor, so
absolutely.
You can thank John all you want.
He's fantastic and unbelievable support. And then that brings me to Sean from Flavor Art. Been such a huge.
He's in the chat room.
Yeah, I did see him. Yeah, I did. We wouldn't be on the air at all if it wasn't for Sean. And then Mike from Divine Labs in Canada. Fantastic support. He's really been there for us since September. And Flavor Crafters, one of our originals, which is John at Flavor Crafters, just fantastic. And Brent Perry at Vape Nation. Sorry, now I'm doing last names. I shouldn't be doing that. And Wendy at Stinky Canuck. I just then it's a lot. And Wendy at Stinky Canuck. Stinky Canuck is fantastic. And you all may drink now. Canuck.
So they're. I mean, obviously they're not. This is a scan. This is not an X-ray. But these are over here. This is a chest X-ray of a COVID patient.
Right.
Of their lungs.
This. So actually, I need to see if I can find lung scans of COVID patients. Let's see.
I mean, the one to the right you showed was something that I'm used to saying, oh, those are lungs, ribs and lungs, The other one's like innards.
Look, when Evali first popped, and see, nobody talks about this anymore, but the actual, diagnosis was whatever this glacial, I think it's called glacial something or other. I know it's glacial. So it's a presentation. It presents in the X-ray as like kind of glass that happens with inside the lungs. But it's not a diagnostic thing. It's just something that happens with inside lungs. So if when I read the science on it and stuff, it just really wasn't clear that it was you could use it as a diagnostic tool to say it's still this airy-fairy thing. It's e-cigarette vapor product, syndrome. It's not a thing. You can't take blood and get it. You can't go through rigorous diagnosis process and say, yes, that's it. Oh, we found the bacteria, or here's the, or even like the proper lung damage that you'd have, say, if you breathed in a toxin, right? The damage that happens to the actual physical parts of your lung is clear. That's not here. This is a glacial something or other thing they call it. And so, that's really my concern is that, you can toss out, an X-ray, no one understands it, and it just supports whatever piece you're doing. And that's ultimately what my issue was with COVID, was that we just went through 6 months of the valley lie, and to just be able to roll into COVID and believe the exact same people, and as they use the same techniques, X-rays and
on the left is the EVALI UK scan, chest scan.
Mm-hmm.
On the right is a COVID lung scan. So at least now you can see this is so this area here would be this same area here.
Mm-hmm.
All this over here.
That's the glacial.
So that's it's there. Obviously, this might be a higher resolution picture.
And the one on the left says the scan.
There's way more contrast on the right than the one on the left.
The scan released B medics, and it's not from who they saw. That's just a stock
scan released by medics.
Right.
No, this is the one that was released by the medics.
Okay.
They just misspelled by and said B. Yeah.
Strange.
Yeah.
Very strange.
Yeah, for it to pop out like that right now and make such news, it's just like, if I was a news editor and I wasn't, vicious, I would be going, that's not news. I mean, this is news right now.
Oh, so it says here, the report, which was published by the European Respiratory Society, goes on to explain, based on the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC case definitions, this patient met the criteria for a confirmed diagnosis of vaping-associated lung illness. Although his radiology highlighted a degree of pre-existing structural lung disease in keeping with the history of cannabis and cigarette exposure, his acute decline occurred within 90 days of vape exposure.
Fuck off.
Sometime in the past fucking 90 days.
Oh, God, it's so fucking painful.
I said go down a little further. They say cannabis.
Hey,
one more time.
I wanted to show because of Brent's bringing up the question of why was this being diagnosed as EVALI and not COVID. So we did that. But yeah, I mean, back to dissecting the bullshit of this piece. I mean, there is
they referenced cannabis twice.
So first they mentioned the fucking CDC, which is bullshit. This is why okay. I always ask, I asked multiple times on the show here, why is Jerome Adams carrying water for the CDC and WHO when he says, well, we're following instructions from the CDC, or we're following instructions from the WHO. Why is a sovereign nation, the UK, why are they carrying the bucket for the CDC?
Because that's what they're told to do. Hey,
literally.
CDC, here's what we need you to do. The next guy that walks in the door that's coughing, this is what you need to do.
Okay, so CDC is the world's preeminent public health organization. Period. Full stop. They are public health worldwide.
Well, that's fucking sad.
WHO is a minor player in the thing.
Well,
something that people don't understand.
Board of advisors for the WHO are CDC.
That's right. Well, this is what I'm saying. The WHO is set up by the CDC. Well, a lot of people don't know just how much control the CDC has. Is that I think 63, I think is the number. If not, it might be 80, but it's like 63 for sure. That's how many countries the CDC in America has gone and set up the CDC in that country. So, for instance, the CDC created the CDC in China in 1983. Mm-hmm. And those connections never stop. So there's 62 other countries out there that the CDC directly set up their centers for disease control. So they all look back to the CDC. So one voice comes out of the CDC on the issues, and that drives, everything, including if it's confusion and stuff. When you listen to other agencies in other countries, when they talk about the CDC, they reference them. They use what's the right word? Deferential
reverence.
Reverence.
They do it in reverence. Yes,
they do it in reverence. Yeah. So it's a real problem. Public health, it should be clear right now that they are the enemy.
They are the enemy. This is war.
They are the enemy. I mean, it's like, if public health, and I said this to John Britton, I asked Derek Gock about this last week, and it's one of our big things that we're pushing in our interviews, and I highly recommend people, watch our stuff. We've pivoted off of COVID to the extent that we got out of our system what we needed to get out, and we're happy we got that out. It hurt us, but that's fine. We had to get on record on what we see and so forth. But we've pivoted because we're not mired in there. There's the vaping issue. We've always seen it to be a larger issue. COVID proves that. COVID proved to us that our assessment of what was going on with vaping was a much bigger thing. If they were not testing their muscle, the CDC and all the governors back in August, September, October, November, December with their whole media blitz, if that muscle hadn't been tested and exercised the way that it was, then maybe the reaction to COVID might have been a little bit different. But they had already had governors looking in their public health authority legislation to how do they ban vaping? How do they take liberty away from their citizens? What the hell? Governors, the same governors with the harshest COVID are the same ones that were, banning vaping based on public health legislation. So the battle, at least with that we're having with public health and vaping, at least is allowing them to exercise these kinds of maneuvers. And so I think they played a role in COVID. Anyhow, just toss that out there.
And predetermined. A lot of decisions.
I just stumbled across a related piece. Now, in my conspiracy mind, I'm thinking, after reading this piece, I'm almost thinking that was a native ad.
All right.
Okay. So
right.
also
for the
a
Respiratory
news piece,
Association.
No. Well, Gizmodo UK just released within the last day a piece, and I'll throw it up here. So it says, this is from Gizmodo UK, and they have a section for vaping. So you scroll down, it says, cigarette company paid for attack on NHS stop smoking services. Mm-hmm. So the NHS stop smoking service is obviously one of the biggest cheerleaders for vaping.
Sure.
In the world. This was released today at 11 a.m. actually. So it says, we can't believe we're still writing stories like this in 2020 or 2020, but it turns out a PR company that sent a press release attacking the NHS and local councils' quit smoking initiatives was working for British American Tobacco. PR agency Pagefield tried to paint the quitting initiatives as expensive to the taxpayer without including information on how much money would such programs save the NHS. It sent a release to media publications across the country, several of which published the contents and did not mention that it was being paid by BAT, nor did the resulting coverage. While it is easy to blame the newspapers for not checking which of Pagefield's clients might benefit from a release like this, it was mostly published in local newspapers, which have been absolutely decimated in recent years. Okay, I'm going to stop this for a second because I want everybody to know this. So Google, everybody knows who Google is. Google actually sent out feelers to multiple medium market and small market newspapers saying, we will pay somebody on your staff that you don't have to pay them anymore to write articles for you. Like they're saying, we want the newspapers to be to still be around, and we want Google is going to pay for a reporter on your staff, and all they have to do is send us updates periodically on what they're doing. And we'll work with them on developing news stories.
Is it news stories or narrative?
Well, yeah,
that's for the listener to decide.
Yeah, I'm just saying again, the conspiracy mind. So anyway, when the subterfuge was revealed by The Guardian, British American Tobacco tried to paint themselves as the good guys here. They said the campaign was intended to help people take up vaping. Will knock us down with a feather. What a bunch of kind-hearted people telling taxpayers they're spending £5,000 per former smoker without mentioning how much that saves the NHS when trying to convince people to keep smoking, literally with British American Tobacco's own vaping products. Surely the Nobel Peace Prize is on its way. And an unsurprisingly unnamed British American Tobacco spokesman had this to say: we believe it is important to raise the debate about new publicly available data which shows that the cost to the taxpayer of traditional stop smoking tools has risen significantly compared to the cost of vaping. We understand that when this data was originally shared with journalists, it may not have been clear it was on the behalf of British American Tobacco. And as soon as we became aware, we instructed our PR agency to recontact all the journalists the next day to clarify this point. Vaping, and this is the writer here. Vaping has not been conclusively proven to be healthier than traditional cigarettes, which British American Tobacco sells lots of from brands including Rothmans, Camel, Lucky Strike, and British American Tobacco itself describes them only as potentially reduced risk products. So my original hypothesis was that this was an embedded piece. The previous piece was an embedded piece or a native ad, but obviously these two go together.
It's a hit piece, period.
Both of these are hit pieces about vaping. Obviously, this woman hides her opinion on vaping until the very last sentence or very last paragraph when it says that it has not been conclusively proven to be healthier than traditional cigarettes.
When she knows better.
So,
and right above,
yeah, I mean,
scroll back up just a hair. The debate about new publicly available data shows the cost of the taxpayer. So if you've got death, lung cancer, etc., and you're spending $5,000 on vaping products, they're not really showing what the cost medically.
Yeah, no, they're not comparing the cost of treating somebody with COPD or lung cancer or any of the other health-related conditions that are attributed to smoking. So my original hypothesis had to be tweaked. So I still think it was a concerted effort between these shitheads to go against the National Health Service. Obviously, British American Tobacco put out a piece saying that it costs £5,000 per smoker for them to quit smoking. That could easily, depending on over time, you could say, yeah, it costs. Obviously, because the National Health Service, you go into the health service, you talk to a healthcare provider, they coach you. I mean, it's a full thing. If you go to the NHS to quit smoking, they're paying an employee to sit with you and counsel you, and you have appointments, and they do follow-ups. If you've watched the video, I can't remember what the lady's name is in the UK. What's the older lady's name?
Louise Ross.
Louise? Granny Louise? Louise Ross.
Yeah. So there's a video that we've shared on the show talking about her and going through the process. So, I mean, obviously you're talking about product, you're talking about paying the counselors and the people, and, so $5,000 is compared to, I know what chemotherapy drugs cost. I know what oxygen tanks cost. I know all that stuff because I actually looked up how much it was going to cost to get Ray oxygen. So, we did that right here on the show. I showed the equipment and everything.
Something that was failed to be mentioned was that the NHS promotes vaping, period.
Yeah.
They didn't say College of Physicians, and they didn't say whatever the other one is. So both of these pieces in the last day, one showing EVALI in the UK, and this one reiterating how expensive it is to convert a smoker to vaping in the UK using the NHS, and then the underhanded, the last minute gotcha at the end where she specifically says that vaping has not been conclusively proven to be less harmful than smoking. So it is a public health
paid piece.
Right. One way or the other.
Public health's the enemy.
Obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that point I was trying to make before I went off into COVID was the simple thing that it's not going to get fixed unless within public health. So, for instance, Linda Bald in agreement with CDC in agreement with Linda Bald, right? Like when that rift gets repaired, or whatever, that's when it happens. But literally, as long as it is within public health, there's that's where it's got to get fixed. I don't see how it gets fixed from the outside.
And the Dr. Siegel in Boston,
You're right. Right.
He was taken out with Glantz. He was a Glantz follower completely. He was with him, and then he started asking questions, and there's the door. You got to go. If you're not going to conform, you got to go. So they're gonna ostracize people that speak their mind, and that's a dangerous place for the public to be.
To be perfectly fair, though, Michael doesn't have a nice rack, and Stanton likes to keep his underlings near him.
Hey, that was one of Brent's guests. Now we don't know if he liked him or not.
Oh yeah, don't be talking about Linda that way. Yeah, I'm just saying any guest. Dr. Yak said something just fascinating on our show 2 weeks ago. For those that don't know, he's the founder and president of Foundation for a Smoke-Free World, which is the organization that gets $80 million a year from Philip Morris, and the commitment's around $1 billion, and to pretty much work the end game on smoking. What a lot of people don't know is that he is the lead guy, the guy that was charged by the WHO to create the framework convention on tobacco control. So, I mean, he's if there's any one person, it's him that led that whole thing straight through to it. And, and then of course it is that framework that is provided based on the reading of it that actually, clamps down on so many vaping research and all that stuff. If it touches tobacco, and now they're trying to say, well, if it touches vaping is tobacco and it's just as bad, and so forth and so on. And so he was with Stanton Glantz, from day one. He's been involved in that. And he said something very interesting. He said that a question was posed. I think Stanton posed it. And, what would you rather have, in the fight against tobacco? Would you rather have an epidemiologist, or would you rather have a political scientist? And Dr. Yak says, he goes, I answered an epidemiologist. And Stanton goes, well, of course, a political scientist. And that answer, it says all of it, because to Glantz, it's not about the science, it's about the politics.
Which is manipulation, which is control.
Which is
what you said earlier.
Keep talking. I just throwing this up here.
Yeah. So, and I've said this before on air just recently, and let me say it again. I mean, take one look at Stanton Glantz, and he's like cut right out of the 1980s, Red Army communist, he's a comrade. Look at him. I mean, he's absolutely typecast, old curmudgeon-y communist.
Yeah.
I mean, to the extent that you can typecast somebody, he's got the role.
Oh yeah, by all means.
Well, he is from California, Stan. So
I put up a graphic earlier in my blog. I went to Wikipedia just for the hell of it and looked up public health, and it says it refers to the science and art of preventing disease. That's their job, prolonging life and promoting health through organized efforts. Here's the important part: informed choices of society, organizations, public and private, communities, and individuals. And then I added, none of that says control, judge, or presume, period. And what you just said is there's Professor Puff and stuff. What you're saying, Brent, is politically, it's much more, I'll use the word profitable because it is. When he gets $40 million grants, that's not child's play. And he's basing that off of smokers, and then he's using it to get more money for his institution that he works for, along with his own salary. So there's there's bias, period. It's absolutely. And you interviewed him, and I was going to ask you about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was in 2016, I think.
Yeah, which nobody got glance. Nobody's got glance. You got him. So that all on its own was great to see.
Well, I mean, he can be a charming guy, you know, in his total, you know, God, he's just, it's amazing. It was a great conversation.
I want you to get Philip Gardner.
Yes.
Get Philip Gardner.
I don't, for some reason, I don't know that name.
Philip Gardner is he's a professor in California. At one of the hearings, we got him on video admitting the only reason that he's there is to get funding for his program. Like, he's fighting against vaping because they need money to do research so that he has a job.
Right.
Temple University.
He's the
one.
one.
He's not. Yeah, he was in California before.
He's with. He's around Glance. I don't know if he's with him, but
he's California, Berkeley.
He'd like to tax e-cigarettes just as much as cigarettes because they're losing money because they're not getting funding for it.
But if you could get Dr. Charlie Gardner as well from Smoke Free World, because I reached out to him and he said that he couldn't be on my show because of Smoke Free World. Mm-hmm. So since you already got one Smoke Free World guy, you can get him because he's a vicious tweeter.
Yes.
Oh, he's a warrior. There's no doubt. Yes.
And
big fans of Charles.
Love him, but yeah, he said, you know, I can't come on the show because of Smoke Free World, blah 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 blah. So, but if you already got one, you can get the other one.
Well, that all depends, you know, because obviously Charles has been a great supporter of RegWatch in terms of you know, posting our stuff and making comments that are helpful in that. I don't like to ever characterize somebody as being a supporter, that kind of thing, unless they're a direct contributor of some sort. But he's been, you know, very supportive of RegWatch. And yeah, when we asked him that same answer, he got, and it was like, you know, go to the top. And so we went to the top. And so I'd like to have Charles on for sure, but I wouldn't want to push him on it because, you know, he's also got his thing in the way that he's delivering against his mandate, right? And he's just killing it. Like, even lately, it just keeps getting more precise. It's like he's got a razor blade. He just gets in there.
And to be perfectly honest, there are certain people that are great on a certain genre or a certain delivery method. There are certain people that are great writers, but when you interview them, they're almost introverted and they're not loud. They're not proud. They don't, you know. They're just not good on screen. But I think that, I mean, you read his tweets and you're like, okay, this guy, I like this guy, but he could be a horrible interview. You never know.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, you know, I was lucky enough to meet him actually in person in DC last year too, as well. And yeah, no, I mean, you know, I'm sure he can hold his own on an interview. So let me just log that. And Charles, if you're watching, you know, be expecting, you know, a request on that. I like these guys over at this foundation. I mean, they're not supporters, but we'd be happy to have them. But I
mean, Dr. Glover receives funding for her research from them, but she came on the show because she wasn't representing them; she was representing herself and her organization.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, and there are people that are like really
other stuff, right? I think that's the key thing. So why we fight to make sure we're doing other content too as well, because we're not just entirely vaping. And with 30 years of my, you know, experience and reputation, that allows us, I think, to be able to get those interviews. I mean, you know, think of it. The two different director generals of the Tobacco Control Directorate at Health Canada sat down with us over 3 interviews. So that's the top person in the entire country in Canada at Health Canada in charge of tobacco and vaping and cannabis, sitting down and talking to us. So that's why that's the biggest reason why we curate stories that we get our ass handed to us from the vaping community. Why are we curating, you know, these stories? Because, you know, for one, it's important for vapors to see the full mendacity that's out there. 2, you can't always count on everybody always seeing it. 3, when Health Canada goes to our website, when Health Canada goes to our Facebook, they have to see that we do more than just, shoveling the propaganda, the truth.
You're not vape media.
Yeah. I mean, we're clearly in the bag, we're totally pro vape,
but that is not your sole purpose for existence.
No. And even on that issue, like other issues, we'll curate both sides of the story. Again, for vapors that, have been ruffled a little bit by our approach, let me assure you that the big interviews that we get, we would not be getting if we weren't curating both sides of the story. It's just as simple as that.
I told you last week on the interview with me, Brent, you ask the questions people don't want answers to, or I may have alluded it that way, but you ask questions based upon curiosity and honesty. It's not a gotcha moment. You're asking a question. You expect an answer. And when you have the higher powered people like Dr. Yak or whoever it is, Dr. Glover or whoever, Glance himself, I thought Glance was an entertaining dumbass in my world. He's a dumbass. But I watched the whole thing just intrigued just to see what he would or would not say or would not avoid. Mm-hmm. Because of your questioning is why I say everybody needs to follow RegWatch, period. There are other issues that you do, but in our vaping part of it, if somebody doesn't like what you're doing, then you must be doing something right, in my opinion, over the experience of the last 6 years. Mm-hmm. There you go.
And let me ask you, Patrick, I mean, when you had sent me that little note on the IM, and I'm one of the reasons why I'm on this show is because I don't have feedback. You'd think that I'd have feedback, but especially with what's happened is instead of me getting feedback from people, there was just pretty much silence. And I can understand that to be the case because I had to get through our COVID coverage, which is critically important for us to do that. And so what we didn't get is berated by anybody. We didn't even get, screenshots, from people that are close to us that have been in groups and that have seen, private, bitching about RegWatch and our position or being political or whatever. We never even got that. It was just, it was lockdown, silence, and that's fine, right? But now that we're out, and you had said in that IM, and kind of tackle, why maybe some people don't like you. It is so funny because like 6 months ago, I wonder if anybody would have ever said that, right? Is it just now, or maybe they did, I don't know, but we hadn't done what we've done with COVID. I mean, we went there. I mean, I put the gauntlet down on vapors that if you believe in lockdown save lives, you can't believe that vaping saves lives because of a fundamental liberty issue, right? And I went through all that and everything else. So I'm curious, what is the word out there? Okay,
so now I'm not going to name names.
Sure.
There are people. Obviously, this goes to the diversity of the vaping crowd, and there are people who have criticized you in private. Apparently, right now, I think in the middle of all this cancel culture stuff, like that's all they do now. Mm-hmm. Is like they call. They make a phone call or they post something or they send a private message to somebody. Hey, did you see this person or have you seen this or do you know who this person is? They're, I hate to say this. I'm not saying this in conjunction with you, but they're anti-Black Lives Matter or they're far right-wing neo-Nazis or, so forth and so on. So I actually saw a comment from somebody who you've interviewed from the vaping world, who was very critical of the experience from being being on your show. And then a whole bunch of other people just started chiming in. Oh, that guy's a super conservative. Well, that's not the word they used, but very right.
They called me a racist. Please tell me they called me a racist.
No, they did not call you a racist. But I just threw that out there because that just seems to be the cancel culture thing now is everybody's, going after people that have been critical of Black Lives Matter, or if you say all lives matter or any of that stuff, that gets a lot of people triggered, mm-hmm. Oh, well, you don't give a shit about black people because you say all lives matter, which is not necessarily the truth of the matter. But yeah, I mean, obviously, you said it before, when you were in California, you were able to work for the Democrats on liberal things in the States, and you worked for John Kerry, and obviously, because you couldn't do that in Canada, because by that time people knew that you were a conservative. But you
no, that's the opposite. I've always considered myself a Democrat in the US, always, and in Canada I'm more conservative. Sorry, but it was never I'm a conservative with different stripes. It's just the politics in Canada and the US are so different, right?
Yeah, because
different. It's so much more left or up here, right? So, the parties that I've worked with up here are more center.
Yeah, no,
right.
A liberal and a conservative in Canada is different because the thermometer is different.
That's right. Yeah. And the party that in British Columbia, the BC Liberals, is a combination of the federal Liberals and the federal Conservatives. It was a legacy kind of a cooperation agreement. So it was the people that were kind of lefty but not too left, and people who were kind of right but not too right, and they joined together in order to prevent the far right or the far left from controlling British Columbia. And that was like 30 years of kind of control. And that was a party I worked with. So up here, you'd be, I'd be, center. Down there, I was always a Democrat. In fact, you could have called me a Democrat until 2016.
Right. But yeah, there are people that believe that you're some sort of, neocon, that you're like, super conservative. And I'm like, well, have you looked at the coverage? Have you looked at, he's been fair? Everything that I've seen has been, except for you did a live stream with John Glosser. I think you guys went a little far on that.
That was
live
the
stream.
first day of the lockdown. That was when I was in my glasses. That was March 16th. That was day one.
Yeah.
So,
by and large, most of your videos seem to be more middle of the road. Here, this is the facts. You can look at this way. I'm going to talk to you about philosophy. I'm going to talk to you about, and you do that. But I think a lot of people, something hit these people, and I don't know what it is. It's whether because they don't know your history. They don't know that what you did in Vancouver with the gay community there, or that you were a Kerry Democrat or any of that crap.
Yeah, totally not. But I would imagine that they haven't watched much RegWatch either, because over the course of 5 years, our coverage is pretty clear on the battle we're fighting. What I find very interesting here is that this is a perfect example. So, what we do is be skeptical, and that's where these comments come from. And I'm very skeptical of vapors who are so quick to shun conservatives. I'm not taking a conservative mantle here, but what would be the problem having a major media outlet that gets the top people in the world on the show, who's clearly 100% behind vaping, and over 300 episodes has demonstrated that over and over and over again, driven news stories, made stuff happen, impacted regulations on behalf of vapors. So whether I'm conservative or a leopard or whatever shouldn't matter. And so part of the problem here is that RegWatch is, when you say that there's a diverse voices, we know that. 2 years ago, we're the first media at all that covers vaping that said to an audience and said, you guys have a cognitive dissonance going on. You've got a large group of people that are not they're not conservative. They don't have the liberty argument. Whether I have the liberty argument doesn't matter. I'm making a journalistic assessment of the troubles with inside vaping, and that you've got people that are naturally more progressive, who believe that government is always the answer. They were told to quit smoking. They quit smoking their way, and then their own people turned on them. Mm-hmm. And they're having a dissonance with their own ideology, because it's their ideology that's clamping down on them. And the inability to deal with that paralyzes activism. It creates the tension within the community and the backbiting and everything else. And then you add Trump, and then the whole divisive break and everything else. It's a problem. So we totally see the diversity. We're the ones that have been saying that the problem is that everybody's been yelling for unity, but meanwhile, it's impossible to have that, because it's a huge diverse group. You can't just be a single issue voter. So we've been actually saying that for some time now.
Right.
So to say that we don't get that there's a diversity inside the community is just crazy, because
no, and that was never the point. It was just the fact that there are people who claim to be, I'm all inclusive, turning around, and we get it all the time. I mean, I'm a fucking redneck from West Virginia. I have an armory behind those doors there. I mean, people don't they don't get, that I'm weird because, I'm married to somebody that's not American, that's not a white, that, and I'm a fucking redneck from West Virginia. But, and I worked in graphic design and art for a decade in the publishing world. So people don't understand that this country guy can be. So I have spent 12 years of my life in college.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah. The debt is, it's done. But anyway, they don't get, because they only live in their own little world where they see little red flags everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
The red flag thing is just suddenly everywhere. People are offended. They will not in any way, shape, or form engage in a debate or conversation, because they're right, you're wrong, and nothing ever, ever, ever will change.
Right. And that's why it's just brutal to put any hope in that part of the community to save vaping, because you have to question whether or not they really want to save it. Literally, because what's more important, saving vaping or those other issues that are red flags above? And I say that they will go the red flag issues before vaping. Vaping gets thrown under the bus by key vaping activists every day when those other issues pop up.
One of the things you said, and I'm not going to share the screen, but I'm going to read one of my little memes that I use. Cognitive dissonance. The occurrence of cognitive dissonance is a consequence of a person performing an action that contradicts personal beliefs, ideals, and values, and also occurs when confronted with new information that contradicts said beliefs, ideas, and values. So I'm going to give an example. In my opinion, I'll let you two assess it. If you say the words harm reduction, and then you say the word Juul or puff bar or whatever it is, a vapor, I'm generalizing, so you can send hate mail to Patrick, not me. Generally, most of the vapors in the United States are going to go, oh, fuck Juul. Wait a minute. You want less harmful products for yourself, but you don't want less harmful products, I don't care what the name is, for others, whether it's snooze, hypnotism, putting a copper band around your arm, if that's what'll help you stop smoking. You found your way. You're not like other people. What worked for me didn't work for you. Cognitive dissonance. This is the only way. No, it's not. So we've had that discussion, Patrick, on this show 1,000 times. Juul is harm reduction, whether you like it or not. And that's part of the problem of the herd mentality of, well, I don't like Juul, so you shouldn't like Juul. Well, I don't like Juul either.
Okay, so this goes along with the, I see, and I just saw Bucky came into the chat room. Bucky, this is not for you because you're old, but nobody else that's in, well, Bruni maybe, but very few, I'll even amend it to say very few people that are in my, well, nobody in my age group, maybe not even in Kevin's age group because Kevin's old, were ever lied to by big tobacco.
Right. Neither was I. I'm 50.
They lied to us. They tried to kill us.
Not to me.
So you constantly hear that.
No.
They lied to us.
Mm-hmm.
No, they didn't. The Surgeon General report came out in 1968, 67. Anyway, it came out in the 60s, and you weren't fucking born yet. Cigarettes were required to have a warning label before you were fucking born. So they never lied to you. So get off of it. people react out of emotion all the time.
Right.
So I choose personally to maybe tailor my message to not as a pro vaping specifically message, but I am pro nicotine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And this is the delivery method of nicotine that I choose. Now, alone using the word nicotine causes issues because there are so many uneducated people in America, probably in the world, doctors even. To this day, I get into arguments with doctors that nicotine does not cause cancer.
Mm-hmm.
Nicotine does not cause cancer. Because doctors, I have to pull out the fucking PDR and show them the nicotine page that discusses nicotine and how it interacts in the body and the fact that it is not a known carcinogen. So obviously we have entire groups of people who feel like they're highly educated people who believe that nicotine is a cancer-causing agent, but it isn't. So
why is that, Patrick? Why do people believe that?
Because they've been twisted and lied to all these years that how nicotine is. Because every scientific study on nicotine up until like the last couple years has always been tied to cigarette smoking. Nicotine study in itself, by itself, without including smoking as a delivery method, is fairly new.
Yeah.
Now, that did not answer your question, but that's where I went with it.
Right.
Brent probably doesn't even remember what the question was now, but you might have to re-ask it because I talked too long.
Well, you're making a point that is right in line with our position on it. It's that, recreational nicotine should be pushed. That should be the thing. It's legal. Nicotine is legal, legally sold by the government in, 40,000 locations all across the US, 100,000, whatever it is. If I can legally buy it in a form that kills me, how come I can't legally buy it in a form that doesn't? Simple, right? That's really simple.
Well, that is until the Bureau of Nicotine Control at the FDA is formed, and sometime in the next 100 years, that's going to happen.
So nicotine is such a benign drug, right? That there's got to be something more behind this. I think nicotine, from our interviews with tobacco control people from like day one, they've said that we made a mistake. We used nicotine as the boogeyman, through the 80s and 90s. Very strongly in the 90s. And because that was just logical, you need to communicate simply to somebody. And the thing is that there was a plateau that was hit with the smoking, because this is pre secondhand smoke. So let me just preface everything here with the importance of the 2002 study that Stanton Glantz did in the Midwest, right, where he showed heart attacks from people from secondhand smoke, but almost exactly the same kind of lie that he did with this recent heart attack vaping thing. It was completely fake, and they used that. They needed that to be able to prove that the damage, the harm that you're doing with your smoking, it doesn't matter. You're allowed to kill yourself, right? You're allowed to do that. The issue is that by doing that action, are you harming others? So, as Ben Shapiro would say, wave your arms kind of rule, right? If I go wave my arms all the way around, as long as I'm not hitting anybody. And that's the principle that's really ingrained in American Constitution and law and that kind of thing. And the battle in tobacco control has always been to break that down and to get the win to where better safe than sorry is the guiding principle, the precautionary principle. And Stanton Glantz's study in 2002 that proved secondhand smoke causes harm was what they needed to then bring in regulation from public health that then shut down, businesses and all that, because it's, you could have a private business, you could have people come in, everyone knows you can smoke, but the employees, because, they work there, and because they get exposed to the smoke, that's what justified the smoking bans that eventually pushed everybody out. We wouldn't have the problem with vaping without losing that battle in 2002. And so pre-2002, it was demonizing nicotine. That was huge in the 90s because they weren't cracking through because people know that it hurts you, and they still smoked.
And it became a social issue because you wanted to get all the other parents, I won't use the word this time, you wanted everybody upset with everybody else. It's a social issue. It's your health now and your children's health and my health because I don't smoke. So the hate starts. In the end, that's the ultimatum on that study. And it sold more product, which is useless, in my opinion, to catapult the nicotine industry, I guess we'll call it.
Right. And, you know, Paul does bring up the point that in Australia, nicotine is actually classified as a poison.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's toxic. It's classified toxic in Canada, but that's kind of fair. I mean, you know, liquid nicotine is it's a bit toxic.
Well, you know, if you, I mean, this is 12 milligram and it's so green that it actually appears to be toxic, but it's because it's a specific special blend for me. But in this it's not, you know, it's the dose that makes it a toxic thing, or a deadly thing, or a poisonous thing, or any of those things. It's not, you know, aspirin. If I take too many fucking aspirins, I could die.
Right. If you drink too much water, you can die.
That is true.
That's called drowning.
So let me make a connection just for the fun of it and throw this at you because we saw on the APHA there, the Public Health Association, American Public Health Association, they got gun violence down as a public health issue. So that public health issue again, well, how do you take away? Some people out there might say that this is okay to take people's guns away. That's fine, but the way that they're going to do that is they're going to use the precautionary principle. They're going to use basically Stanton Glance's 2000. You can't find another, except for maybe the precautionary principle found its legs from the Exxon Valdez spill in the early. That's what really drove that moved that forward. And keep in mind, the precautionary principle is enshrined in the EU Charter. It's enshrined in Canada. It's recognized in the US, not enshrined, but that battle is getting lost every single minute. And vaping has been, smoking and vaping are the contemporary US examples of that fight happening where it's not now about the harm you do, it's the harm done to others. And if they can just prove that it's possible, the precautionary principle says that when there is an absence of science, then you have to act.
You're guilty until proven innocent.
Right. So the very people that say follow the science, and then they say better safe than sorry, those are completely opposite positions. The better safe than sorry position legally as a precautionary principle says when there is no science or there's contradictions in the science, you have to then take the precautionary step. And so it's mitigation not based on science.
And then you toss in a couple words like children and dangers and formaldehyde. And yeah, nicotine's such a scary word anyway. Yeah.
So most science, they build that. Okay, I have an idea. This is my hypothesis. This is my experiment to prove or disprove my hypothesis. That's how science normally works.
The null.
So now,
the null. N-U-L-L. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
so now they have, well, this is my conclusion. Now let me build a hypothesis that allows me to build an experiment that gets me to my conclusion.
No, that's opposite. They're wrong. The null hypothesis says you have to do everything to disprove your hypothesis. And if you can't disprove it, then it becomes a legitimate statement of scientific fact.
But currently, how science is being conducted, they have an end result They
That's
build their experiment to get that end result, and then they formulate a hypothesis that gets them through all of that to the conclusion that they want.
And that's why it's not science.
That's how science is being conducted now.
That's right. And it's not
They have
science.
an ideology. They start with an ideology. They have vaping bad. Okay, so how could vaping possibly be bad? Well, it could affect the lungs. It could cause heart attacks. Okay, so now let's go find a whole bunch of people that vape that had heart attacks. Okay, so this guy had a heart attack and he vapes. So that proves oh, he had a heart attack before he started vaping. Oh, never mind. Well, we're going to use it anyway.
Yeah, and I was on you there because you're totally right, because that is the way science is being conducted, and it's not science. Science is based ultimately in the end on the statistics. It's the abstraction of the observations and so forth into statistics. And in statistics, anybody who's done the boring statistics thing knows what the null hypothesis is. Science is based on the fact that you develop a hypothesis, you can believe it to be true, but your whole job is to try to disprove it. And that process of disproving it is what hardens science. We routinely will use the term hardening science. And that process of hardening science is the null hypothesis, is disprove the hypothesis. Because everybody knows, I can say this, they'll get it. Though, you'll go, any scientific fact or any law, the physical law, is only as good until the next law that comes around that disproves it. Einstein is right, full on. Well, so let me use this. Newton is right. Newtonian physics is right until somebody comes along and disproves it, which is what Einstein did. And so that says it all. And so, yeah, everyone goes, yeah, I get that. That makes sense. Well, that applies to everyday science too, right?
Right.
Yeah.
The graphic shared for the listeners, Glantz in 1992 said what he applied to his research relating to tobacco is, quote, if this comes out the way I think, will it make a difference? And the answer is yes, then we do it. If the answer is no, or I don't know, rather, I'm sorry, then we don't bother. That's the criteria. That's not science. That's what you just said earlier, political science. That's what it is.
That's political science, yeah. No,
So,
you nailed it, Patrick. You nailed it. Like, how do you stop that? How do you get people to see science differently than that? I mean, we call it, and it's funny, no conservative talks like me. I mean, it's unbelievable. I mean, I'm talking about hegemony and dominant hegemonic ideologies, and people are waving their sticks going, he's conservative.
People are Wikipedian words that you use right now.
Yes. Well, hegemony is a total Marxist term. It's from Antonio Gramsci, thrown in jail by Mussolini in 1932. Antonio Gramsci is like the architect of the march through the institutions, and he was the one that put pen to paper to the concept of the way in which ideologies in the large scale fight it out in the realm of human consciousness and action. And so you've got ideologies that are banging away at each other, and they operate in the same process. And so for those that are on to use a not a best term to say left, but those who are in that side of the thinking, these are the tools in which that they developed in order to attack capitalism with. Well, but they're tools that describe the way human beings create meaning, and the way that those larger groups of meaning fight it out in the world of religion and science and politics and so forth. Are we good people? Are we a blank slate? Are we born blank and it's only the environment, only our cultural institutions and social institutions,
nature versus nurture,
right? Or are we tabula rasa, or whatever? And so, and these are things that human beings have been struggling with for 3,000 years. And so, you call it, people might want to call me conservative. Let me just say this. I'm a counter-revolutionary. That's what I am. There is a battle that has been going on since, you could characterize as battle between Aristotle and Plato. The difference between Aristotle and Plato is the exact differences that you could apply to conservative and left. Notice I don't use right often. And you would put that, this is the first time ever RegWatch has ever been characterized as a right-wing media group. So I loved it. I was like, okay, so I'm officially right-wing as of this show. It was awesome. But the thing is though, is that right is a term that doesn't apply. And I wanted to do this here. So I'm going to walk us through something for a second, but you've got very far on one side, let's say it's left, it's communism. And then let's say you got communism, you got socialism, you've got progressivism, then you've got conservative, then you've got fascist. How do you go from conservative to fascist?
There's no gray, there's no middle areas in there.
There's no middle areas in there. So then, political scientists around 50 years ago realized that this dichotomy that they're creating on this line didn't quite fit, because people would say, well, wait a minute, those on the far left, communists, and you take a look at how they act, and then those on the far right, the fascists, and you look at how they act, you go, my God, they use the same tactics, the same viciousness, the same violence, the same exnomination, the same othering, the same thing. And so the political scientists about 40, 50 years ago said, okay, well, it's not a line, it's a horseshoe. And it bends like this. And then on one side is the extreme left, one side is the extreme right, and they come so close, they almost touch. And that's why they look alike, but they're so far apart. They're so far apart. They're still like acres apart. And then you still got, conservative, oops, I'm a fascist. And okay, that's totally wrong. Well, let me just hit the punchline. The punchline is this, is that line exists. It's just conservatives aren't on it. It's a line of collectivism. It goes from communism, socialism, progressivism, fascism. They all share the same concept of power. They all share that government and the collective is over the individual. And they'll censor, they'll coerce. Well, that's the line. And I'm not saying conservatives at all are like some holy group of people. I'm not religious. And so you can rip that out. So, but I'm just saying like that concept of left to right really exists along a line of collectivism, as opposed to, you can't just stick individual liberty on that line and it's sit.
So, I mean, if you think in historical, and to be perfectly honest, there's never been a real communist society ever. They
didn't get it right. They didn't do it right. Yeah.
So, okay, for example, I don't think anybody in anywhere would argue that Stalin and Hitler and Mussolini, if you took them and just laid them side by side and compared everything that they did, would say, oh, well, this guy and this guy are complete opposites.
Right.
Because all three of them on that line would have been in a different place on that line.
But on the line.
Yeah. But, by our historical, what we learn in history school, what we learn in civics class in high school. If you drew that line, they would all be on separate places on that line.
Correct.
But obviously they did the same awful shit to their people. Their programs were designed specifically. Hitler killed gay people.
Mm-hmm.
Stalin killed gay people. They're completely different on the spectrum, right? Hitler killed people that were of different, religions or ethnic groups that were different than his own. Mm-hmm. Stalin did the same fucking thing. You look at today, you have communist China. They're putting people in concentration camps because they're Muslim and they come from a different ethnic background. So, yeah, politically, that line is meaningless. It's my clique or my club or my, like you said, collectivism. People that are in my group are better than everybody else, and that's where we're going to run everything, and we're going to tell everybody that's not us how to live.
Right. That's right. And so how does that fit with like a traditional, kind of libertarian person or something, or conservative even? And keep in mind,
Well, I mean,
conservative got a different connotation in Europe, right? They actually were trying to conserve the monarchy, and they were trying to bring back the monarchy, but that was not the case in
no. I mean,
US.
America don't want no kings or queens. No, I mean, myself. I mean, most people would consider that I'm some sort of weird, like right wing or super weird, crazy libertarian guy politically. But like I said a while ago, I'm like I don't meet your definition of conservative because, you know, I support gay rights. I think that women should be able to do whatever the hell they want to do with their bodies. I'm not going to tell people what to do. I have tons of guns, but I also think that people should be able to smoke pot or, you know, I'm a big fan of Ethan Nadelman from the drug policy. And, you know, that's really hard for me because where do you think that the Drug Policy Foundation gets a huge chunk of their funding? Do you know, Brent?
Yeah, they get it from the Open Society and George Soros. I mean, we had Ethan Nadelman on the show in January, in December, I think, January, one of those 2 months. And yeah, I talked to him about that, right? And he regaled the story about, you know, how he met George and got funding and stuff like that from him. So it's Open Society, no doubt.
How in the hell can I support drug policy and Ethan Nadelman if I'm a right wing nut job because George Soros is the bane of all existence and the most evil human being on the planet? Oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
That's almost
so,
like,
you know, because I'm a critical thinker and I understand that not everything I read on the internet is true. And, you know, maybe George Soros is a crazy nut job and but you know, it's just fucking money. But if I was if I was one of those people that a lot of people would look at and say, oh, well, you know, yeah, he's a crazy Texan or a crazy guy from West Virginia that's a, you know, hillbilly and a redneck. They wouldn't get me.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I believe
you make the point that the people, they're complex. These issues are not so cut and dry. I mean, I'll put it back to you. I mean, we need to have more dialogue and compassion in talking about these issues and instead of pushing it so far to an extreme, right? I just throw it back at you.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the fact that people are not black or white on anything. You know, there's degrees, there's shades, there's, you know, and it's hard to, why would you want to cookie coat people or cookie cut people into certain shapes? You know, you can't fit a round peg into a square hole or a square peg into a round hole. And that's what everything has to be in its place and everything has to fit in this category and on this spot on the line, or the new political thing I've seen is a grid shape and you answer a bunch of questions and it says you're here. And, you know, I think that's laughable because their questions are designed specifically to place people in those spaces.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
well, you know,
whether it's a horseshoe or
right. A lot of people don't know what they believe. That's the thing. Those things are designed to try to help you understand what you believe, right?
Oh, it says I'm over here in this little square, so that's where I must be because the 20 questions that I answered put me in this spot, so that's where I am. That's bullshit.
Yeah.
But, you know, we are designed to be people want to know where they stand. You know what I'm saying? They want to know, oh, well, this is the group that I identify with. This is the group that I should be in. And they want to be in a club. We're very communal people. We want to be around people that are like us, or most people are.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, you know, here's the thing. I believe that that the battle comes down to this. There are people who believe that we can socially evolve over evolution. And there's others that go, what the hell are you talking about? I mean, like, we can't socially evolve over evolution. You know, there's innate things in us that, you know, human beings, you know, have, period, right? And so this one side believes social engineering, socially evolve over evolution. The side that believes in science is the exact same side that believes that that mankind can socially evolve over science. That's how much they believe in evolution, right? And then the other side is the ones that is apparently anti-science, and they believe in the airy fairy superstition and God's up there. But meanwhile, these guys here believe that human beings are essentially the same, and we always are going to be this way. And it's not that they don't want change; it's just that chaos breeds chaos, and so there's a structure of tradition and stuff like that happens to help keep that going. Where the other side believes we can just wipe shit clean, and in a matter of 2 decades, 60 years, socially evolve over evolution, and it doesn't get you anywhere. Sorry, yeah, I'm back.
No, I've actually seen, but we're looking at the perfect experiment into socially engineered evolution right now.
Yep.
And this is not a vaping thing. This is and I'm sorry if you're a millennial, you're gonna get hurt by this. I'm saying this now.
This message has been brought to you by Patrick.
You can send. This is not an anti-Karen thing, so you don't have to send hate mail to Kevin. But the emotional strength of these young people today. I mean, I said it before. Nobody's interested in having a dialogue or a debate anymore because they're triggered because they've been trained that words are violence now. And you can't have a differing opinion and hold a debate anymore, or the art of conversation is dead now because everybody's learned, and this is going to hurt Twitter people. Everybody's learned that a conversation must occur 120 characters at a time.
That's right.
Nobody calls anybody anymore. Nobody goes and speaks to people anymore, even pre-COVID, because of social distancing. But we used to talk to people face to face.
Discourse.
There is none of that anymore. It's all headlines. Let's put as much drama into as few words as possible. Let's make them big bold letters to get people's attention. That's all they need to know. And now there's an entire generation of people that won't sit down and have a conversation, that can't sit down and have it someone with a differing opinion be on the other side of them without screaming. I mean, the Greta girl, what's the girl? From
Greta
Iceland or
Thunberg?
Yeah, that girl. She's a perfect example. Like when I've seen interviews with her, or I've seen her on stage, they had her on like a COVID what's the word? A broadcast, like I think they had all these people on stage. They had her on stage with like experts on, pandemics and public health and all this. And they had this little girl on, and like she couldn't hold a conversation without screaming because her feelings were hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sorry, but I believe that this is what they've been trying to do is create a woke generation that won't sit down and have a conversation and are unwilling to accept facts that are different than theirs.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, you guys, the thing is too, is that it's not like this hasn't happened before. This is what everybody has to start understanding, is that this has happened throughout history. The French Revolution bred this kind of stuff. The Public Safety Committee on Public Safety. I mean, if you go back and you read anything from the French Revolution, you're seeing what's happening here right now. One of the reasons why that history has been destroyed, and this isn't political, I'm talking now ideology, I'm being counter-revolutionary here for a second. You have to destroy the history because you have to prevent the current generation that you've molded and need to affect the action that you're looking for, which is destroy. What you need to do is you need to discredit all history for them, so they don't go and look backwards to see themselves. See, they've destroyed. If you think of it this way, is there anybody in history that, for those of us that know some history still, is there anybody in history that you could accurately say to some millennial today, look, this is people just like you? There isn't. To them, there isn't. right? Think of the millions and millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of people in 1850 in the United States, right? That were just the regular common herd. They were a Christian herd, right? So, okay, they're Christian, but whatever, but they're just the regular mass populace of the United States of America. Well, that regular mass populace of the United States of America, there was no radical DNA shifting that happened into them. They're the same people. And 100 years later, 150 years later. And, you can't let anybody today see that those people back there were made up of the same mixed up people, assholes to
the 99%.
Right.
I mean, literally,
Totally.
you could draw a direct correlation between the French revolutionaries fighting against the 1% as if the people, that's the dialogue they want to use now. The 1% has all the wealth and 99% have nothing. And that's the exact same thing. But I always like this. I'm going to bring this up because, you're talking about counter revolutions and revolutions and stuff. You see all these young people wearing Che Guevara shirts.
Mm-hmm.
And they've never fucking actually read a history book to understand what Che Guevara did. I mean, you're wearing a t-shirt with a guy who led like pogroms against gay people, like killed gay people, like all over in the country. But I see people that are liberal, revolutionary kids wearing a Che Guevara shirt. And I'm like, did you not read the history and understand what he did?
Well, no, because you'd be hard pressed to find any history text that would even touch those people that would be painting him in the light that you're just describing. You're describing history that's no longer available. Right? Our generation will be gone, and once our generations are gone, unless something changes, the concept, there's no teaching of communism or Che or any of the more drastic kinds of ways. I'll cede your point that communism has not fully been in place anywhere, but still, that history's gone.
Yeah, I mean, fucking China, right in the fucking CCP, communist. Right. It's right there. But yeah, they're not an actual communist society. They never were a communist society.
And I think for intellectual purposes and everything else, it's valid to have that conversation. But in the end, though, there's totalitarianism. So let's just take it out of communism and let's just call it what it is. It's totalitarianism, and socialism leads to totalitarianism. Fascism is totalitarianism. Communism is totalitarianism, and so can progressivism be totalitarianism through the administrative state and the cooperation with corporations. People don't understand the true definition of fascist. They just got this right-wing thing in their head and they just scream it like bloody murder, like just like that. And they don't understand the definition of fascism actually is technically when government and corporations meld together, right? And basically control. And that's what it is. And so our regulatory state is the connection between the government and the enforcement the enforcement energy of the executive and then corporations. I'm not saying regulations are bad or arguing that they should be gone. I'm just calling it what it is. Fascism is when corporations and government meld together. And we've got that. And we see what's happening right now with the woke thing. Right? You would say, well, government's not involved in woke. Well, that's wrong. Government's totally involved in woke. Right? From woke comes from the 1964 civil rights legislation. Woke comes from Title IX. Woke comes from 40, 50 years of legal rulings that have happened. So to say that woke is not integrated as a government operation, it is government. And we're seeing the collapse of the barrier between the ideology, wokeism, and all that it has, government and its power and its ability to enforce, and corporations and their money, their influence, and all of the power that they have. And we're in a fascist state.
Yeah. I mean, but I've noticed recently there's been some actual creep in definitions in recent times, and how certain words have been redefined recently.
It's why I
actually
bought a 1967 Encyclopedia Britannica set so I could have this huge
this
dictionary.
This is actually not as bad as other words that have been redefined recently. But it's still this has changed slightly.
It's hard to get a definition of fascism.
Well, it says
when I was a kid,
capitalized at the beginning.
Yes. In a political philosophy, movement, or regime, such as that of the fascisti, I can't even say that right now, that exalts nation and often race above the individual, and that stands for a centralized autocratic government headed by a dictatorial leader, severe economic and social regimentation, and forcible suppression of opposition.
Yeah.
So,
and the dictatorial thing is the problem. That's what needs to get struck from the definition. It's conveniently there all the time and focused on, because look, we're not this is not fascism because there's no dictator, right? But fascism it's authority, it's control. So to say that the definition of it has to be a dictator, I think is part of the problem of the fascism definition.
Right. But, you do see a tendency towards people to use that word today often in conjunction with Donald Trump. And I'm loath to defend Donald Trump because I didn't vote for him. He wasn't my candidate. I didn't vote for the Clinton either. But at the beginning of this COVID thing, he went out of his way not to exert authority because he knew that they were gonna pull that argument out. Oh, he's a fascist. He's trying to take control of the states' rights and blah blah blah. And now they're saying, oh, he's bumbling. He didn't exercise his authority when he should have. So he was in a situation, as far as I'm concerned, where there was no move for him that would have worked. They would have used his action against him. Oh, well, he's overstepping his authority and he doesn't have the authority to do that. And the perfect example of somebody that did that was Andrew Cuomo. The mayor of New York, a week before the governor announced that they were shutting the state down, the mayor said, I'm going to use my mayoral authority to shut shit down so people don't get sick. And Andrew Cuomo went on TV and said, he doesn't have the authority to make that action. Only I have the authority to make that action.
Yeah, that's what makes COVID a brilliant pincer. One needs to ask themselves this, and this is not conspiracy. This is just a question, and I'd actually throw it out to you. So the question isn't whether or not, if you were to be conspiratorial and say, okay, so they spent, from day one with Russiagate, trying to get them, and over and over and over again, and then you've got everything else, and finally, eventually, Ukraine, and then they actually impeach him, and then the impeachment stops with the Senate closing the proceedings. I think on February 2nd or something like that. The CDC lit the World's Hair on fire on February 25th. Same people that have been fighting the vaping thing. They closed the Valley investigation the morning of February 25th. The afternoon, they held their telebriefing and lit the World's Hair on fire. They went around legislature. They went around the president and the executive. Public health made the decision and directly connected with their weekly, bi-weekly telebriefing calls, lit the World's Hair on fire. Everything's going to change. The world's changing. That's it. This is it. And so it was a pincer movement. And, somebody might say, would this have happened if they had impeached the president? If the Senate had impeached the president, the question is, would public health have still done the same thing? Or would they have talked to the Democrats? I think there was probably obviously talk. I mean, there's a connection there. But you have to ask yourself, if the president was impeached, would they have pulled the plug on Western civilization? And if your answer is, I don't know, then that means it's political. Because this decision is so massive in the history of the world, right? I
I actually believe they would have, because the person that would have been left holding the bag would have been Mike Pence, and they would have tried to go out. It would still be political in that scenario, but they would have gone. They would have done everything possible to show that Mike Pence is the next devil.
And that's why it's political from day one, because you go and you see Pence and you go, well, they would have done it anyhow because it's Pence. Well, then they certainly did it anyhow because it's Trump. Right now,
I do want to preface this by saying, as somebody that works in healthcare, and I firmly believe that COVID is a real thing, that it's deadly serious. Our numbers here in Texas, here locally where I live, I can't profess to know everything about Dallas and Houston and other cities, but our testing numbers have been pretty constant over the last 2 months. The number of tests given have remained pretty constant, but the number of positives have gone up significantly. Our hospitalizations are,
sure, but let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a question. Epidemiology, which is the science that we're supposed to, for vaping, for smoking, for COVID, all these things. Epidemiology is the science that we're supposed to trust here. It is a science on population level. They specialize in pulling out averages of huge populations. To this day, the CDC has not yet done any randomized testing in the US in order to get what would be an accurate number of the infected. They have not done that. They have not done that.
What I would say is, the fucking test is bullshit. It's the test that we have. There's multiple versions, but the nasal swab is the most commonly used still. The finger prick, they have a blood test now that is a rapid response test. Even that test is still not accurate.
So then we shouldn't be putting any. Why are we making decisions of life and death and stuff on stats that are not solid? And we know that the CDC and the WHO sent out guidelines to how to classify COVID in their own words and language. If you think it might be COVID, but you have no test, but you think it might be, you can put it down as COVID. We know that.
Well, I mean, the tests are all coming up. Not where I work, but they sent 4 unused swabs to be tested. All of them came back positive.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Wow.
Yeah.
So now the only good barometer that you have is patients that are coming in that are symptomatic. And looking at like we showed you the fucking chest scans. Right now, that is, I mean, the blood test is more accurate, I would assume. But until we have antibody testing, which is still not being widely distributed, you're not going to know shit as far as that goes. But our numbers, our ICUs, like they actually had to build a new ICU unit in the hospital where my wife works because they had that many ICU patients. We used up all the ICU beds in our county already.
So I totally, and obviously for sure, we face these issues as a species on this planet all the time. I mean, all of a sudden at our height of our technology, at the height of our science, we go medieval. Like it's like our reaction to this thing is just, it's inhuman. It's not indicative of our stature of a species on this planet, because we've been dealing with these things from day one. So how is it that we're so incapable of dealing with this without destroying ourselves?
Well, we didn't even actually shut down here in Texas. I mean, yeah, we didn't actually have a full shutdown. A lot of businesses remained open the entire time. A lot of like retail stores did close, but the restaurants were open the entire time just to take out. And many of them actually made money because they didn't have to pay staff. So, we're not indicative of the rest of the world or the rest of the country because we didn't shut down a whole lot of stuff. I mean, a lot of haircuts, you couldn't get a haircut for 8 weeks or whatever, which for me is pretty bad. But when they started reopening everything that they had shut down, like the mall and the gyms, we did see a spike. I mean, clearly, it's clearly measurable. And the only difference is that I saw a huge backlash on social media about fucking wearing masks. How wearing a mask is somehow in any way, shape, or form threatening.
I think I think the mask thing though is a perfectly designed tool to again distract. I mean,
but the people, I don't understand something. The people, the fucking conspiracy people that are out there going, oh, the government's developing facial recognition software. I would think that these people would be the most adamant about, yeah, I want to wear a mask, but they're the ones that are the most adamantly anti-mask. It doesn't make any sense to me.
It's very difficult, to understand. I mean, to drag back into the thing, to fascism, to connect with this, because there's fascist tendencies that are happening here that are fully connected. It's unbelievable. And the mixed up way people are thinking, you brought up definitions on fascism. It's funny that you grabbed that, because I had something set up here about 35 minutes ago that I wanted to show, and you just nailed it with fascism. And I'll pose this as a statement and a question, actually, and I'll answer it. I mean, what did the East Germans call the Iron Curtain, the Berlin Wall? What did they call that? And on our side, we're like, well, they call that, the Berlin Wall. It was the Iron Curtain. Yeah. And it's not. What they actually called it was the anti-fascist protective rampart. That's what they called it. And it's also what the Soviet Union called the entire Iron Curtain. If you know anything about history, communists would just call everybody from the West a fascist with the exact same venom, that the exact meaning, right? If you were from the West, you were a fascist. All these little whining little millennials are actually fascists in the true technical sense of the term. And so they literally called the Berlin Wall the anti-fascist protective rampart. Wow. And that's from the history of the Berlin Wall up on the Independent. And I've got more. If I need to prove this to you, I mean, you can find it in Wikipedia. Here's the Google search. The East German government claimed, that's a change, and didn't used to say claimed that the wall was an anti-fascist protective rampart. It's actually was the name. The forces and the acronym on the East Germans spelled out anti-fascist protective rampart for what that organization. Yeah. So the whole Eastern Bloc of the world was calling us fascist and meant it. And so, that's, you got to think of that. And so when what's happened now is, instead of calling somebody you disagree with a fascist, you just call them a racist. Right. But it's still the same thing.
Well, they're having campaign creep too. I mean, they get tired of using the same, we get campaign creep. We get tired of, using the same verbiage, and we get, it's just boring now because we say the same thing over and over again. We get tired and humdrum. So we have to spice it up by changing some things and, changing definitions, or, using a different epithet. We'll do that.
New normal.
Hey, Kevin, I just put that link to you in messages if you want to throw it up.
Yep.
And there's one more, guys, that let me show you, because this one is just a killer. Let me see if it's right here. So it was hard to find this. It was in a piece of literature of some sort I was reading, because I read a lot. And it mentioned it. I'm like, what the hell? And so finding actually 1 second here. Sorry, I should have had the other one ready.
And to be fair, everybody has seen Brent's overhead picture or overhead video. He has like 8 computers on his desk and monitors and screens everywhere. So it's hard for him to find things, because it's,
one of those.
It could be on a window over there in the, in a sneaky little place that he's not looking at right this minute.
That's exactly it. Right. So I obviously,
I felt pretty bad about having 5 monitors in my office on 2 different computers. And I look at that and I go, holy shit, I need a bigger setup.
It is a blessing and a curse.
Okay.
Well, you guys don't wait for me. I'll find it as we're talking, and then I'll pull it back. It's a good one. It's worth it. So just hand it off to you.
Fig says that you're a bot. he showed up because you're surrounded by robot or computer stuff, and it looks like Darth Vader's bathroom in there now. So
okay, I found it. All right,
he found it.
I found it. All right, so this is this one you'll love, I hope. Okay, 1 second. Let's put this. Okay, all right, and it's tight. It's Wikipedia. And you can't always trust Wikipedia, but there you go. This is the Dignity Battalions. So the Dignity Battalions were a paramilitary militia created by Panama's government in the 1980s to help defend Panama against both invasion by the United States and internal subversive activity. They were formed in early 1988 and were de facto dissolved along with the Panamanian Defense Forces in 1990. So the structure. The Dignity Brigade made up, I'm trying to find it. So their job basically was to go around and slaughter people. And they were called the Dignity Brigade. And it was all social justice. It was, it was the whole big thing. And I just, whenever I hear dignity, I can't help but think of murderous cults going around murdering people over dignity. Well, think about it. Dignity is a justification, the ultimate justification for everything that's happening. Every single thing is about empathy and dignity. And dignity is the end goal of the empathy. And so our job is to remove the structures of racism or whatever that's preventing the people from actualizing to dignity. And what you hear a lot from the people that are pushing the violence and everything is that we're doing this to give this person dignity. And that's the ultimate fundamental error that leads to mass murder, because no other people can give an individual dignity. That bestowing dignity is like, that's like, monarchy kind of stuff. That's God stuff, because dignity is something that only an individual has. You can shame people. You can harm their dignity. You can do damage to it, but the dignity is only something that the person holds. And if that person doesn't know what dignity is or how to achieve it, then that's what we have now is millions of people who don't understand how to build their own dignity and think that it's something that's being infringed upon from power structures. And then, so this side over here is going, yeah, we can fix that.
Critical thinking.
I'm just shaking the rocks in my head right now.
That's right. And that's the kind of stuff that gets me called a conservative.
Oh, well, no. I did see an argument the other day. Somebody had, it was an argument about, lifting yourself up, which, kind of ties into your dignity argument.
It kind of, the bootstrap argument, but that's been so
the bootstrap. Yeah. Like,
I'm not talking about the bootstrap argument. I'm talking about something deeper. Dignity is deeper.
Well, yeah.
Self-worth.
But, having pride, pride in yourself, being proud of yourself, those are all, there are so many people that are so fragile these days that it doesn't take anything to knock them down. And that's, I think that has a lot to do with, the way we treat our kids today. They're so, when I was a kid, we were allowed one thing, like one after school thing. You could be in the band, or you could play football, you could do this. But these kids today, they have band on this day, and they have baseball practice, and then the next day they have dance recitals, and it's just like there's so much pressure in a lot of kids today that they're just like a little chihuahua. They're just shaking all the, there's nowhere for them to just go and do what they want to do, because they're trying to always be impressive to their parents or their peers or whatever.
Right.
That, one little bruise to their ego destroys them.
So let me ask you then, though, how does that equate then? Because that's the standard story, the helicopter parent, and then of course the kids with all the pressure and to succeed and stuff. But the point is, though, is that all meritocracy has been ripped out of the whole system for at least 30 years, definitely 20.
They get credit. They get credit.
Everybody gets the same. Everybody gets the same. So is it the fact that they're competing, or is it the fact that they're competing but there's no recognition of excellence? And so it makes the competition, which is a natural thing, meaningless. So these kids got their souls ripped out. They are being rushed through all of it, but yet not given the joy of competing properly.
And then we get to the point now where they've been under all that stress for so long. Now that they fucking either they check out, they're going to sit at home and lay on the couch and play Call of Duty until they're 40 now.
There's no reward. And then in context or out, when they read, I'm going to flip around for a second. When they read a headline at 22, that's what they believe. They don't understand context. They don't understand history. And they don't understand the breadth, the width of what they're reading or trying to understand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, true. Totally. I'm so concerned. I don't think that we could have these problems in public health and in science without the stripping of meritocracy, right? Affirmative action, all that kind of stuff, equity and everything else, everything is good in moderation, right? In my opinion, maybe that's a conservative aspect of me. So I wonder what happens when you've got 35-year-olds that, exist at the top layer in public health or at the next rungs, right? And none of them actually understand competition. The competition to them is a social thing of fighting and back and forth and grievances and all that. And that, I think, is put a cloud on science, is put a cloud on government, right? It means that there's energy that's being expended, wasted on these issues that have getting in the way of getting things done. And meanwhile, they all want action. They're the ones that are all like action, change. But there's not real science. There's not real leadership. How can you really lead if you and everybody around you, right, has a feeling that you only got there because of body parts or skin color? That's got to be happening.
There, in science, there is such a value placed on being published that there's a rush to be published, right? Yep. So let's do everything possible to get this done quickly, because this other group over there is researching something very similar to what we're researching. We want our paper to be out first. Science
first.
Science becomes secondary to getting published. And you know what the number one worst thing that you can do to a scientist that's been published is to have to retract. So, we saw Stan, we mentioned the heart study that he had to retract. But it stands in an untouchable position right now. Like, he makes so much money for UCSF. Any other scientist that had to so publicly retract something, there would have been a penalty. But so now, we're talking about pressure to get out, to get your shit published, to do this. These younger scientists are willing to cut corners. The scientists that are older that want the money are in a situation where they're also wanting to get their shit out. So then the science just fucking gets blown out. Nobody gives a shit anymore about actually doing true science. The same situation with the mask, the same situation with all of the different models and studies out there about the COVID. Everybody is in a rush to get published first instead of focusing on getting the science first.
What's right for the public? What's right for the people?
Stanton Glance's science is now too big to fail. There's too much that's depending on his science.
There is entire branches of the economy of California that is reliant on Stanton Glance's funding. Wow, and we're not talking about $40 million. That's one tiny little bit of funding that Stanton Glance is responsible for. I mean, I think in Fig's in the chat room. Fig could probably throw out the number. It's $300 million. It's $800 million. I mean, you start looking at the amount of money that he's responsible for in California with different legislative bits that he's gone and he's been a spokesperson for, or he helped write or whatever. The amount of money that he is responsible for in California is huge.
Just California.
Yeah.
Tobacco control. Stanton Glance's science is a raison d'etre for tobacco control.
Say that again really slow.
Raison d'etre. Raison d'etre.
That's not a type of raisin.
No. I mean, it's the reason for existence.
Yeah.
In French. It's reason for being. And
But the young kids that you just mentioned, one of you, have to go by his rule book, and if you go away from that rule book, you're out. So now you have lost your reward.
So we mentioned his name, and he has appeared. Here let's bring in our interloper.
Oh, slacker!
Fig.
Hasn't joined in the conversation in like 3 weeks. Say his name, he shows up.
He wasn't allowed in here 2 weeks ago.
Well, no, that was because it was his anniversary and his wife is very important to us.
That's
but his microphone is not plugged in because he's talking and I can't hear him.
You say his name 3 times, he just pops up. It's like one of those click your heels.
And he said a while ago in the room that he was 3 sheets to the wind. So let's see.
Oh, this should be fun.
Now.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Now we can hear you.
Yeah. No, I mean, look, I've been living a normal life for the past few weeks, and I really, first and foremost, I miss you guys tremendously. I do. I miss you. I miss our Friday nights.
Yes.
I've got to put these on because I like better.
Well, now we can see.
Goddamn, Brent is sexy as hell, isn't he?
We got the 2 best hairs in vaping right now.
It is close, Fig. I'm telling you, it's close.
Now I did see a Facebook post where Brent cut his hair.
I'm telling you, like you made a comment in chat about Brent's hair. You haven't seen Brent's hair in person.
Well, I did.
And you haven't seen Brent in person, I don't think.
Yeah,
briefly.
He held Brent's camera bag in DC. I heard the story.
Yeah, if you were to meet Brent in person, you'd be awestruck.
Please.
No. Look, every time I have any extra cash, I send it to you. You know that's true.
It is true, and thank you so much.
I don't have much, but I love you, and I love what you do.
Thank you, sir.
One of the reasons that I wanted to actually come on is, I had obligations, and I really, really, really wanted to be present, at least to catch tonight's episode of Son of Liberty with you on it, because look, you are, man, you're one of those cats. You're like Patrick. You're like Kevin. You're like Son of Liberty, where you say what you mean.
Yes,
and there's no bullshit. And like, look, one of the things I wanted to say, and whoever's listening, now I don't know who's listening because of the StreamYard stuff, but whoever's listening, like, know that, like, whatever you get from Brent, you're getting, like, full frontal. And, like, whether you like what he says or not, you're getting it, And there's been a couple times I've donated to Brent's channel because I didn't like what he said.
Wait,
but
you can think critically? Fig? What?
Wow.
you know, there have been times where like I was listening to Brent and like, you jackass, you fucker, you blah blah blah, and they're like, God damn it, he just turned it around and made me like see this differently. And really, I mean, this is why we listen to podcasts. Patrick would be proud of me. Like, over the past few weeks, I've been driving a lot and listening to podcasts. I listened to you guys on my drive out to Morongo yesterday. But, this is why we listen to extra stuff and watch extra stuff to get a different perspective. And, Patrick's been doing this for years. Brent has been doing this for years. But I wanted to make sure to, I wanted to pop in here and just say thank you, Brent. You've been kind of a jackass at times, but,
I really appreciate that, Fig. It's huge.
Wonderful jackass.
The guests don't really like being called jackass. I'm just saying.
I mean that affectionately. That, man, you've really helped me to, tailor my thoughts on a lot of issues over the years, and I just want to thank you.
I appreciate that, Fig. Thank you. It means a lot. Thank you. Everyone needs to realize that everything I say is on behalf of vaping. It may sound like so crazy, but it really is. Like, I'm trying to win this battle with you all. And so part of my job being a journalist who's had the ability to cover this issue and the people involved, like you guys, for 5 years, is that I see things. I see things that I try to move you in certain directions to at least help you guys see, stuff like harm reduction. I mean, you can bang your head against the wall with that, but our analysis of that is it's not winning. So we're going to throw that out at you. It doesn't mean that we say harm reduction is something that shouldn't be or that there was a mistake, but we have certainly seen at this point that it's not winning, and it might be the law of diminishing returns. People might have a problem with that. Right. But I'm not doing that because I'm anti-vaping or I'm conservative or whatever. It's a thing that's happening. My job is to point it out. It might change. It might be wrong. Either way. But that's my mandate, is to not just go fight science. It's also to evaluate the vaping movement and help move it. Does that make some sense?
Well, no, absolutely. And sorry, Kevin. One of the things I want to make sure to say is, there are times where it's actually necessary to, pull, some levers, if you will. And there's, almost no one better than Demetrius Agrafiotis, with pulling some levers to cause some panic, some strife, some struggle to pull people in to the audience so that they can hear what they actually need to hear, right, to come to action. And where we are now, we are on the precipice of amazing change, right? I say amazing change because the fact is vaping is not going away. And it is amazing that, the fact that vaping is not going to go away. It has rooted itself as a technology. Now, the hands that provide vapor to consumers, that's going to change. And I think that we're not completely out of the woods yet. But yeah, I was going to go a different direction with that. I'm just going to take a little step back with just say that we need some stark realities, and you provided that oftentimes, and I'm grateful.
I'm going to finish my thought before I forget it because I'm old. It's the same sentiment, Brent. If anybody listening or watches your show and wants to hear what they want to hear, then they're happy. And Fig gave a great example. He's watching it and you pissed him off. And that, my friend, is why I love you. Because if I'm going to watch your show and I'm not going to learn something, or you might just tip me to go, holy crap, he's right, or the interview question brought something to light that changed my mind or made me see in a different form of what I couldn't understand before, possibly. That's power in its own. And it's the same thing with tweets. If I say something stupid and somebody else makes it better, that's fine. I don't care, as long as it was motivating and inspiring to do so. Right. If I'm going to watch you and you're just going to tell me what I already know, boring. So keep doing what you're doing and fuck everybody else. And Canuck is the other drink word for the evening.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
One of the mission statements of my show, when we first created the show, and I said it on the very first broadcast, was my job is to teach you how to think for yourself, to give you the tools to find the answers for yourself, so that you can, if I give you information, if I tell you the information, you haven't learned it for yourself and you don't know how to express that to other people. So my whole purpose on doing this show is doing the media deconstructions and dissecting their articles and showing people where the tools are to find this information, was to build advocates.
Right. Is
to show people how to do this, because nothing I do is magic. Like finding information and reading it and tearing it apart and finding the flaws, that's never been like a magical thing. It's just something that people have forgotten how to think and how to teach and how to learn. So that has always been. So when somebody tells me, or I hear Fig tell you that you pissed him off, that triggered him. I hate to use that word trigger, but that triggered him to actually go and find out information for himself.
It made him go like this first.
No, 100%. And the same goes with you, Patrick. Like, there's been so many times that you've, like, you have your way of seeing information, and you've presented so many different viewpoints over the years that, that part is magic, though. You're looking for information. Yeah, that's not magic. Anybody can do that. But the way you extrapolate information, it's a beautiful thing.
Well, I fucked up earlier. I read 2 pieces. We did 2 news pieces, and I had developed a hypothesis before I completed reading the second piece. It didn't
right.
materially change the fact that both of these pieces were corrupt bullshit pieces.
Don't tarnish my image of you.
That's the third time Patrick has been wrong on his show.
It has happened. I've been doing this for 8 years between the 2 different podcasts. So it's possible that I've made 3 mistakes
so far.
Totally possible.
Just in case you missed my comment in the chat, your beard is looking lovely.
I trimmed it because it has to fit under an N95 mask now. Because I have to wear an N95 mask 10 hours a day now.
So you guys, while I was coming on to give a shout out to Brent, and that's really why I joined. While I was doing that, you were talking about my friend Stan Nance. I have to give a shout out to Cindy Schmidt, though. Cindy, you are a badass. And no, Brent did not tell me to say that, but Cindy.
There she is. Brent built. Well, Cindy is with RegWatch now. She's she's full on. So, all of our curation and every show that we've done in the last 2.5 months, she's been a producer on it. So we're in fact, this was right before COVID happened, and so we brought her on, and then COVID happened. So if you guys we're going to be doing a fundraiser soon, and we need people to. It's not just me behind RegWatch anymore. We've got badass people like Cindy, on staff.
And Fig, if you were paying attention to the show when I was on the show a week ago, she prefaced the show talking about me. which
Yeah.
I appreciated.
So thank
Did
you,
you
Fig,
actually-
thank you, Fig, because like, you know, I've been a one-man band for so long, I forget to, you know, push the accolades off. So I appreciate that. Thank you. Cindy's excellent.
She just followed me on Twitter yesterday.
So she's doing her job, you know.
Just, I've got advice for you, gentlemen. Just don't cross her.
She is an attorney. She is an attorney, and
Oh no, no!
she is not shy. She's pretty awesome. So Stanton
I
Glenn,
have a Shakespeare quote, but I won't do it right now.
you know, I have to agree with Brent. Like, you know, no, he's the protected class. He, you know, he is the golden goose. You know, and when you look at like the grants, you know, there's like 12 million here, 14 million there, 20 million there. You know, those are like really small potatoes when you look at just that. It might seem large, right? But like his testimony and his fake science just with California helped get tobacco control 11% of the tobacco tax revenues. You know, now understand, we've talked about those revenues in the past. You know, prior to Prop 56, California was bringing in between 700 and 750 million. The year after, the first full year after Prop 56 became effective, they went from 750 and change $million to 2.1 million.
Billion.
Billion. Yeah. 2.1 billion. Thank you. Appreciate that correction. And so like 11% of $2.1 billion is an incredible motherfucking amount of money. And I know that a lot of people don't like Stanton Glantz and they like to poke, you know, at him, blah, blah, blah. But the motherfucker has been instrumental. I don't think that they could have gotten through a lot of stuff that they did without his influence. And he's been doing this for over 40 years. Mm-hmm. And whether we like it or not, you know, the tobacco regulatory science communities, you know, his word is golden, right? Yeah. Right, Brent? You know, his word is golden. And so, like, when he shows up at a committee hearing and he speaks, it's like gospel. Yeah. And so, like, at the end of the day, like when this dude, like his time on earth has come to pass, here's the reality. His work will have made trillionaires of corporations. He did a phenomenal interview about the sugar industry, where he was talking shit about meta science. You know, it was like, 8-10 years ago. You know, about how crooked it was, but how effective it is. What are all of his, scientific, so to speak, data submissions? They're all meta. They're effective.
And
he's effective.
We've ad nauseum the meta science, but I really want to thank Brent for showing up and for being on for 3 hours. I told him at the beginning when he came in that I know he had shit to do. If he wanted to come in and say his piece and get out, he could do that. And he's been really nice, and he stayed 3 hours and 21 minutes. And I want to thank him for coming, but it is winding down. So I do want Brent to we always ask everybody that's on here, everybody gets their final words, their parting thoughts, closing thoughts. So Brent, we're going to let you give your parting thoughts, and then Fig can come in with his parting thoughts, and then Kevin, and then I, and then we'll all go to bed.
Excellent. Obviously I've said a lot. So tonight, let me say, I think it's important for everybody to know that as a professional, which I am, been doing this a long time, we know how to pivot. And so we made our pivot out of COVID. And, it was a professional decision for us to go as far as we did with our COVID coverage, because it's an extraordinary time. And we own a media organization that we built. It's mine. There's no big media organization. It's been paid for out of the blood, sweat, and tears of mostly vaping. So, to ask you, you'd have to ask yourself, what is it why would all of a sudden he go this far? And I did, because it is that important. And it's the same enemy. It's public health. Public health has revealed itself. And so, and the majority of the people that are on our show are public health. And so it's not just, the vapors in our audience that got tweaked and stuff. You have to understand, we had to evaluate our impact on the people that come on our show, the John Brittons, the Derek Yucks, and so forth. And you see, they're on the show after our COVID coverage. You have to ask yourself, why is that? That's because we are respected. That's because we are professional. And we do have our audiences good. We have the best wishes of our audience in mind. And so I just ask them to understand that, we're on their side. That's it.
Yep. Figgy, you got something to say?
I miss you. I miss Kevin. I miss Brent. I miss our friends that tune in. It's really wonderful to see you guys. Have been really busy, but really listen to what Brent has to say. Obviously, listen to what Patrick and Kevin has to say. These are very, very critical times, and what I hope that folks consider is this is not just vaping. This is our lives. Any of you that have listened to Patrick and Kevin and I for any length of time, you should know that it's not just about vaping. It's about human rights and freedoms and liberties. And, the wanton disregard for humanity, it's really present. And unless the masses, speak up, out, and take a stand, it's going to continue. So we got to be more boisterous with our actions and our voices.
Kevy? Karen? Kevin?
Bob, James, Brent, I appreciate you coming on. I want to shout to Cindy as well. And you guys know how I feel about harm reduction, and Brent brought up a good point. It's not, the message is nowhere near where it needs to be. Everything is harm reduction, from drugs to alcohol to whatever, except smoking. There's a reason for that. They don't want it to go away. On a perspective level, when you're talking to a professional with what I've learned 30 years, I guess, with Brent in the industry he's been in for a long, long time, communication. He's a communicator. When you pull in and sit down and watch your show with him for 4 minutes and you make a decision for the listeners who will listen later on, and you think, well, what Fig said earlier, it riled him up. It made him mad, but it made him think. That's what he's supposed to do, folks. That's his job. So he may give you a perspective you don't like, but if you're going to just turn it off, forget about it, and move on and criticize, do it better. find a better way to do it. It's the same thing I said about my survey. There was 1,000 people that loved it, and there was 100 that didn't. Do it better. I don't care. Take the guy's experience. He's got Cindy as well with him, who's a professional. Everybody in here has a life outside of vaping itself. He covers more than just vaping. And being a vapor, he took this on. And I'm grateful for it. And when I met him in DC, I told him so. I carried his crap around like a puppy dog on purpose, and I didn't mind a bit. I loved it. And then somebody else took over, one of the security folks, and we had a lot of rules to go by. But he was there to do a job, and I was so grateful that he showed up. I was like, "Holy shit, Brent's here!" That was a huge thing to me, specifically me. I didn't care what anybody else thought, but he got some good stuff. He got Tony, and he got some consumers, and he got business people as well, and he got some great footage, and he got some great content for us to understand other perspectives, and that's what he does. You have to understand other perspectives. He's gotten everybody from Glance to, I believe, Dr. Rodu. And if you go through 300 and something, I was like 320 and grateful to be on, but what a bunch of shoes to fill for me to just come on as a consumer who's nowhere near the caliber of who he's had. Go back and look at what he's done. Don't base it on one question. Content. Think of your content, folks. That's it, Patrick.
Thank you very much.
Kevin, first I have to address this that you're just a normal consumer bullshit.
Well, I'm a
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
So you've had at least 4 academic studies done
I'm going
on
to
your
mute
behavior. You are not average consumer material. So I have to address that for one thing. You are the subject of multiple scientific studies. So you're not just the average consumer. So there is value to Brent interviewing you, and you shouldn't say that you're less than any of the other people that he's interviewed. I wouldn't have you on if I didn't think that you were exceptional. But I just want everybody to understand what Brent does is important. It's valuable. It's information, science and truth done properly doesn't have an agenda. It's information. When you absorb that information, you are the one that gives it an agenda. Fact is the same as being as neutral as possible. It's a fact. It's reality. This is what it is. So when somebody gives you fact for free, you shouldn't fucking complain about it. Period. What you do with that fact is what you do with it. You are the one that gives it some sort of color or agenda. I want to thank Brent for coming on. The value, the importance of what he does, what we do is we give you information, we give you tools. What you do with it is what you do with it. My goal, and I'm assuming his goal, is to educate people so that they can learn and become better. Use it as what you should be doing with the facts is fighting for the truth or whatever your personal ideology is. Information should never be charged. Information should be free to everyone. And I do the show for fun. Brent has to put food on his table. So go to the RegWatch website. There's a support tab. Click on the support RegWatch tab. I put the link in the chat. I'm sure Kevin can throw it in there real quick. Because what we do is not the same as what he does. I've mentioned it before. This COVID thing has shown us that people that are newsmakers and news givers on the networks, that's all facade, because you put them at home in front of their computer and they try to do their show and they can't fucking do audio for shit. They look awful. They don't have the teleprompter in front of them. You see them gaffing and and blah and making all sorts of mistakes because they don't do this. What he does, what we do, is we actually learn this shit before we give it to you. They're showing their true colors now because they don't learn shit. They just read shit off of a fucking teleprompter. And the quality of news that's being provided today is awful. So when you have somebody who's willing to sit down and read something, absorb it, decipher it, and then give it back to you, that's important, because all these other news people, they're showing us podcasters and content creators and stuff that they don't know what the fuck they're doing. They literally do not know what the hell they're doing. They're just regurgitating bullshit off of headlines or a script, but they haven't learned it. They haven't lived it. We learn and live this shit. So the people that are in the chat room, Troop, Chris, Bruni, Nicole, Cindy, hello, Sydney. All you people that are paying attention to the show, our job is to teach you so that you can teach other people. So that's your job. Go out and give out this information for free. Learn how to read this stuff, absorb it, decipher it, find the bullshit, and point at the bullshit. That's the best way to piss off media people, is to show where they fucked up. Your story's bullshit because look here. So, I want everybody to enjoy their weekend. This is the 4th of July for the Americans that are in the chat room. There's a couple Aussies and a couple New Zealanders, and there's some Canadians in there too. But tomorrow is the greatest day in American history, July 4th. So, they've canceled the fucking fireworks everywhere. They've closed the beaches down here again. So enjoy it with your family. Go and kiss your kids. As soon as you get done here, they're probably in the bed asleep. Go plant one on your partner and get in the bed. Wake up tomorrow and enjoy the 4th of July. Monday, all the battles start again, and we have to be recharged and ready to fight. So be good. Love you guys. There's no exit music tonight, so we're just going to go. Love you. Stay out of trouble.
Happy 4th.
See ya.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.